Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. One Piece. I ate forest mythical fruit and my code name is Green Bull. Chapter 1. Navy Branch 47. Behind the branch base, Jon sat on a rock, looking at the sea in the distance, with many thoughts. 17 years. With a sigh, it has been 17 years since he came to this world. Although he has adapted to this world, whenever he is free, he will think of the world that belonged to him before. What's wrong with it? Why do you want to travel to the world of One Piece? And there is no system and no golden finger. Fortunately, I have a good background. If I had traveled to an ordinary background, I might not be able to survive until now. For Jon, time travel is not scary. After all, in his world, various time travel novels have become the norm. Even if he travels through time himself, it is not unacceptable. What makes Jon depressed is that others who have traveled through time are all cheating on various systems, but he has been in this world for 17 years and has neither a system nor an old man. If there is any difference, he is really different from ordinary people in one thing, and that is that he has awakened his domineering energy since he was a child. Seeing and hearing is domineering. I don't know if he was reborn through time travel with his memories, which caused his spiritual power to be very prominent. Therefore, when he was very young, his hearing was different from ordinary people, and his perception and acuity were also very good. After figuring out that he had traveled to the One Piece world, Jon understood that his ability was the Haki of knowledge and knowledge among the three colors of Haki in the One Piece world. It's just that unlike other people who acquire the Haki of knowledge and knowledge, his Haki of knowledge and information is innate. This is the only comfort that Jon feels. Although there is no system, there is still some advantage. In this life, Jon was quite lucky. He was born in the South China Sea. His father was a colonel of the Naval branch and the commander of the branch base. Looking at the South China Sea, he had a very good background. Lions Jon, this is Jon's real name in this life. Because he comes from a Navy family, Jon has received a good education since he was a child. Coupled with an adult mentality and harder training, he is much stronger than his peers. At least in this 47 branch base, there is no opponent among his peers. Even among the branch Navy soldiers, his strength is outstanding. However, because he knew that the water in this pirate world was very deep, he rarely left the branch base. He always stayed in bed, hoping to make himself strong enough before going out. Although he rarely leaves this acre of land, having a father who is the commander of the base, Jon also knows a lot about the outside world, and gradually determines the timeline he is in based on the major events that have happened in recent years. About a few years ago, Jon learned from his father Wolson that the Rocks pirates, the overlords who dominated the Grand Line, were destroyed by the Navy and the Roger pirates, and the Rocks pirates became history. Because of this, Jon judged the approximate era he was in. At this time, the Navy Marshal was still Cyborg Sora, and the Navy Admirals were Sengoku and Zephyr. It would still be several decades before Straw Hat Luffy went to sea and the plot began. At this point in time, Jon was very depressed because he had no understanding of the plot of One Piece in the previous decades. If he could make good use of the plot after it started, but now it's still 30 years before Straw Hat Luffy goes to sea. Apart from knowing some powerful people who will become famous in the future, he can't help with the rest of the plot at all. Too busy. Fortunately, the South China Sea is one of the four seas and is not as chaotic as the Grand Line. As one of the four seas, the South China Sea has a very strong deterrent effect from the world government and Navy. There are many pirates in this sea, but basically the Navy can still control the sea. After all, this is not the era of great pirates. Jon's heart moved. He heard someone approaching. After more than 10 years of training, he had reached the level of proficiency. With his absolute calmness, he could cover most of the island. Jon. After dozens of seconds, a middle-aged man wearing a Navy Justice coat walked over quickly. Jon stood up and called, "Dad." The person who came was his father in this life, Lionel Watson, who was in his 40s, had a beard, was over 2 meters tall, and was very tough. Jon was about 1.8 meters tall in front of him. He looked much thinner. "Jon, I have something big to tell you." Watson's face was full of joy, and it seemed that he had indeed encountered something very happy. Jon asked, "Dad, what's the big happy event?" Jon still respected his father very much. He worked in the Navy at the Nane branch base for more than 20 years. Although he was not very talented, he relied on hard work to become the base commander of Branch 47. He was also a famous naval colonel in the South China Sea. He captured and killed hundreds of pirates. The headquarters has just issued an important notice. Admiral Zephyr will be transferred to the Naval Academy as an instructor. The headquarters allows each branch to select outstanding soldiers with potential and talent and send them to the headquarters. Speaking of this, Walson's face was full of excitement. If you have outstanding talent, you will have the opportunity to become the first batch of students of General Zephyr. Even if you are not selected by General Zephyr, you can still stay in the military school to study. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. What a great opportunity! For the vast majority of naval soldiers in the naval branch, the naval headquarters is a sacred place and the goal they long for. If they have the opportunity to serve in the naval headquarters, their future will be much brighter than in the naval branch. The Four Seas branch is a completely different concept from the Navy branch and the Navy headquarters of the Grand Line. Normally, the rank of soldiers in the Four Seas branch is about 3 ranks lower than that of the main branch. Just like John's father, Watson is the commander of the branch base with the rank of colonel, but if he is placed at the Navy headquarters, he is equivalent to the rank of captain. When Wilson was young, he had always longed to serve in the Navy headquarters. Unfortunately, due to his limited talent, he failed to achieve this goal. Later, after getting married and having children, he no longer had such an idea. But as his son John grew up, he discovered that John's talent was much better than his, so cultivating John became his current goal. Originally, he was thinking of waiting for John to grow up a little, and then use his connections to find a way to get John to the Navy headquarters. Even if it didn't work, he would get John to the Navy branch of the Grand Line, which had more prospects than the South China Sea. Who would have thought that before he was ready to take action, this news would come from his headquarters? It has never happened before that a serving naval admiral has become the instructor of the headquarters, and the Navy headquarters is also preparing to recruit outstanding soldiers from each branch below. Wilson felt that this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, so he wanted to pursue this opportunity for his son. This time, the Navy headquarters is recruiting naval geniuses from all over the world, as well as the Grand Route. Even though Watson had great confidence in John, to be honest, he didn't really expect John to stand out and become the first batch of students of Admiral Zephyr. For Watson, even if he is no longer under Zephyr, as long as he can keep John in the naval school at the Navy headquarters, it is enough. Is General Zephyr going to become an instructor? However, John's expression changed slightly after hearing the news. He still knows a little about Zephyr. He remembers that Zephyr seemed to want to leave his job because his family was killed by pirates. Later, he was retained by Kong. Zephyr, who still had hopes for the Navy, retained the rank of general and became a Navy officer, instructor. Although Zephyr ended tragically in the comics, it is undeniable that he is definitely a super powerful character. It goes without saying that being able to become a naval admiral means that he has strength. After he became an instructor, the disciples he taught were also among the best. Among them, the most powerful ones either became admirals or candidates for admiral. There were also many lieutenant generals at the Navy headquarters who came from under him. As for other generals, there were countless others. It is no exaggeration to say that Zephyr is the #1 person in the pirate world when it comes to teaching his disciples, and the probability of his disciples becoming successful is also frighteningly high. John remembered that Akainu and Kizaru, among the 3 generals of the Navy, seemed to be Zephyr's first students. Now that Zephyr is going to become a naval instructor, it seems that Akainu and Kizaru will also join the Navy this year. If you can become a disciple of Zephyr. John's eyes flashed. Although he has been training hard for more than 10 years, there is a big difference between having a teacher and not having a teacher. Although his father can also give him guidance, compared to Navy Admiral Zephyr, he is completely different grade. Therefore, after hearing the news from his father, he was really tempted. Even though he has always adhered to the principle that he must endure until he has enough strength, but now that he has such a good opportunity in front of him, how can he be willing to give up? Dad, if you want to go to the Navy headquarters, what are your requirements? John knew very well that the Navy headquarters wanted to recruit talents instead of waste this time, and there would definitely be certain requirements. Watson replied, Each branch can only apply for one quota, under 30 years old, and the final results of the reporting personnel will also be linked to the performance of the branch. If the reporting personnel's performance is too poor, the branch to which they belong will also be punished to some extent. Influence. Such a request is natural. Jon is not surprised to have such a request. Under the age of 30 is the most critical period for a person's growth. After the age of 30, a person will be stereotyped. Unless you really have full potential, otherwise it is really impossible. Can't compare to young people under 30 years old. The performance of the reporting personnel is linked to the branch to which they belong. This is also to prevent some people from using their power for personal gain and selecting people indiscriminately. It can be seen from this that this time the Navy headquarters is recruiting geniuses, not cannon fodder soldiers. Dad, this time, I'm going to the Navy headquarters. Jon made his decision directly without hesitation. Watson nodded affirmatively and said, "Of course, I am going to submit your name directly this time. Although there are several outstanding candidates in the base, you are my son. No matter how high the price is, this quota will not be available. It will definitely be yours." This kind of opportunity is what many people want, but for the sake of his son, Watson is not prepared to conduct internal selection at all. Of course he had to consider his son at this time. No matter how high the price was, he could accept it. Jon could understand his father's thoughts, so he didn't say much. It would have been the same for him. No matter how close or good the relationship was with others, how could they be compared to his son? "Dad, I'm sorry to bother you. You can tell the others that as long as I can stand firm at the Navy headquarters, I will not treat them badly in the future." Watson laughed heartily. "This is something I have considered, so don't think too much about it." 1 month later, the pickup warship sent by the Navy headquarters will arrive at the 47th branch base tomorrow. The night before leaving, Watson called Jon to his office. "Jon, you are going to board the ship and go to the Navy headquarters tomorrow. Before that, I have something to give to you." Watson came to the corner of the office, knocked on the wall a few times, and then pushed it gently. A hidden compartment appeared on the wall, and there was a small safe inside. After opening the safe, Watson carefully took out a wooden box and placed it in front of Jon. Seeing his father's cautious and nervous look, Jon suddenly felt that there must be important items in this wooden box. "About 3 years ago, during an operation to suppress pirates, I obtained a treasure from the sea. At that time, I could not hold back my greed and kept it privately. I have kept it to this day. Now I want to give it to you." Watson's expression was serious, which made Jon nervous. Treasure of the sea. Devil fruit. Devil fruit. When Jon heard these 4 words, he was immediately shocked and looked at his father in disbelief. Devil fruit, this is a special fruit in the One Piece anime. After eating it, you can gain certain superpowers. Although it is called a devil, for many people, it is also a secret treasure of the sea. There are 3 types of devil fruits: the Superman devil fruit, the natural devil fruit, and the animal devil fruit. Even the worst ordinary animal devil fruit has a market price of at least 100 million Baileys. A devil fruit can turn an ordinary person into a strong man instantly. Its value is really immeasurable, but at the price, the eater will be rejected by the sea, become a landlubber, lose strength in the sea, and cannot swim. For many people, taking devil fruit is a shortcut to becoming a strong person. Jon never thought that his father actually had a devil fruit. Watson opened the wooden box, and inside was a green fruit, which was somewhat similar to an enlarged version of a peach. The difference was that the surface of this fruit was covered with spiral patterns that looked like tang grass, giving it an extra layer of texture. A sense of mystery. Is this a devil fruit? When Jon saw the devil fruit for the first time, his eyes widened as he looked at the green fruit, filled with surprise and suspicion. "Yes, it is a devil fruit, and only devil fruits can be stored for several years without deteriorating," said Watson. Looking at this devil fruit, for some reason, Jon didn't feel greedy. Instead, he asked curiously, "Dad, since you got it 3 years ago, why don't you eat it? In that case, you can get some kind of superpower and greatly enhance your strength." Watson said solemnly. "Having said that, eating it also requires taking risks. Let's not talk about what abilities you will get. It's just that you can't swim. This is a fatal thing for me who has been fighting at sea all year round." Weaknesses. Jon nodded. It was indeed true. Many people recognized the ability of devil fruit and instinctively ignored its weaknesses. But in fact, the weakness of not being able to swim is really fatal at certain times. If you are fighting at sea, if you accidentally fall into the sea and no one rescues you, you will have to wait for death. Not everyone can have a reliable companion worth entrusting their life to. Furthermore, I am old. Even if I eat it and gain some kind of ability, it will be difficult to develop it to how powerful it is. So I kept it and plan to give it to you later and let you decide. Watson looked at Jon with burning eyes. Jon, you are different from me. You are much more talented than me and have a bright future. What you lack is just an opportunity. Now this opportunity has come, and it's possible for you to take advantage of this opportunity. You want me to eat it? Jon asked. Watson shook his head and said, no, I have searched for a long time, but I still can't find out what the power of this fruit is. I don't have the courage to eat it myself, and naturally I won't force it on you. I just give it to you. You, let yourself choose. Any choice has two sides. Whether you want to gain a fatal weakness for an unknown ability or give up it, only you can make the decision. After patting Jon on the shoulder and handing the wooden box to Jon, Watson said, I have done everything I can do. Next, you can only rely on yourself. What to do with this devil fruit? You have to make a decision before arriving at the headquarters base. If you decide to eat it, that's it, but if you don't want to eat it, then sacrifice it after arriving at the headquarters base. Give it to the headquarters. This is an important strategic material. If you donate it, you will definitely get a certain amount of credit, which will be very convenient for you in the future. Jon held this devil fruit and felt that it was extremely heavy. This was not just a devil fruit, but also his father's expectations and wishes. He devoted himself to his father and had already made plans for his trip to the Navy headquarters. Paid too much. Dad, don't worry, I won't let you down. For no other reason than for his father, who hopes his son will succeed, he will definitely be selected in this selection. I trust you. The parting was sad. On the next day, Jon said goodbye to his parents and boarded the headquarters warship that came to greet him. Because it was the first time for him to leave his parents, his mother, who had always doted on him, cried and sent him away, while his father, Watson, sent him away with expectant and encouraging eyes. The warship responsible for picking up and dropping off was a large warship. When Jon boarded the warship, in addition to regular Navy soldiers, there were more than 20 young Navy soldiers on the warship. These people were all outstanding people recommended to the headquarters by various branches in the South China Sea. Soldier. The Navy soldiers who boarded the warship obviously knew that everyone would become competitors after arriving at the Navy headquarters, so they did not communicate much with each other. Instead, they looked at each other. When Jon appeared, many people frowned secretly, because Jon was too young, at least among their group. He was the youngest, and they were in the South China Sea, and they had not seen Jon, nor had they heard about it. Jon had no intention of communicating with anyone else. Under the arrangement of the soldiers on the warship, he chose a room to stay alone. On the contrary, the recommenders of several branches knew each other, and they stayed together and discussed each other. I've never met the person sent by branch 47. Could it be that he came in through connections? Coming in through connections. This time it's tied to the performance of the branch chief. How big of a connection does it have? Who knows, but that's fine. I hope he doesn't have any abilities. In that case, we will have one less opponent. Haha, that's the truth. If we can stand out this time, we will really have a bright future. It's easier said than done. There is still a gap between those of us from the Four Seas branch and those from the Grand Line. Then you have to work hard, disciple of General Zephyr. Not only can you improve yourself, but it is also a kind of honor and qualifications. The next day, the warships crossed the South China Sea, took away the people who reported from each branch, and then headed towards the Grand Route. Jon originally thought that the warship would go directly through the windless zone and enter the Grand Line, but in the end he discovered that the warship did not go through the windless zone, but came to the Red Earth continent, passed through the Red Earth continent, and then entered the Grand Line. Without walking through the windless zone, Jon guessed that the warship was not built from seafloor stone. It may also be that Vegapunk has not yet built a seafloor stone warship, and the Navy does not yet have the ability to directly pass through the windless zone. The person in charge of the pickup warship this time was a rear admiral from the Navy headquarters. Under his leadership, he quickly crossed the Red Continent, changed to a warship, and headed towards the Navy headquarters Marineford in the first half of the Great Line. Staying in his small room, Jon looked at the devil fruit in the box, hesitant in his heart. During these days on the warship, he rarely went out and stayed in his room all the time. Apart from simple exercises, what he thought about most was about this green devil fruit. If other people knew about Jon's current hesitation, they would definitely think that he was being hypocritical and refused to eat the rare devil fruit even though he had it. Isn't this hypocritical? But in fact, this is not the case. Devil fruits are strong, but their weaknesses are also fatal. Of course, this is not the most critical thing. The most important thing is that Jon doesn't know the specific ability of this devil fruit. If you want to identify the ability of a devil fruit from its appearance, unless you have a complete devil fruit illustrated book, it will be difficult to identify the ability of the devil fruit. Although Wilson is the commander of the Navy branch base, he still has no access to things like devil fruit illustrated books due to his seniority. Of course, Jon didn't need to say much. There were many people with abilities appearing in the comics, but not many devil fruits appeared. He didn't recognize the ability of this green devil fruit at all. In this case, Jon would be very hesitant. He was very afraid that he would eat a useless fruit. Although many people shouted loudly, there is no such thing as the most useless devil fruit, only the most useless ability user. But is it really so? No, the abilities of some devil fruits are destined to be strong, while the abilities of some devil fruits are relatively weak. If you eat a devil fruit with poor abilities, even if it improves, if you want to surpass the strong ones, you must pay much effort. Jon is very confident in his talent and has a natural domineering attitude that cannot be found in the whole world. Maybe he can't be compared with monsters like Akainu and Kizaru this year, but he is good at it and is not too weak. The chance of staying at the Navy headquarters is still very high. And according to his father's idea, if he hands over the devil fruit, he will definitely be taken more seriously. But Jon was really unwilling to do so. Even though this devil fruit was full of uncertainty, it was also an opportunity. To gamble or not to gamble? Seeing that he was about to arrive at the Navy headquarters, Jon felt hardened, no longer hesitated, and made a decision immediately. Even time travel has happened to me, which means that my luck is not bad. After eating, even if it is really a useless ability, I can develop it very powerfully. Jon, who comes from another world, thinks that he is beyond most people in this world in terms of imagination. As long as it is not an animal-type devil fruit ability, he is sure to develop it. Picking up the devil fruit in the box, Jon took a deep breath and bit into it. In an instant, Jon's face became extremely awkward, and his expression was really colorful. As soon as he took the fruit into his mouth, the taste almost made him spit it out. Men, you have to be tough on yourself. After taking one bite, Jon never wanted to take another bite. Anyway, you can gain the ability by taking one bite, so there is no need to eat the whole fruit. After gathering the remaining fruits, Jon began to feel the abilities he had gained. Half an hour later, Jon frowned, feeling that he had not changed much. He can neither transform into elements nor transform into animals. Could it be that he ate a superhuman devil fruit? Looking at his hands, Jon tried hard to use his abilities. He was sure that what he had eaten was a devil fruit, so he must have gained abilities, but he had not yet determined what abilities he had. Suddenly, Jon found a touch of green appearing in the palm of his right hand. Under his shocked eyes, he saw a green seed emerging from the palm of his hand, and it slowly grew larger. After more than a minute, it actually appeared. Green shoots. This is. Staring at the green tooth in his hand, Jon's eyes revealed a look of disbelief. He was certain that this was the green tooth he had created. From the time the seeds appeared to the time they sprouted, it only took a few minutes. Jon knew that he had not had this ability before, so this ability must have come from the devil fruit he had just eaten. Seeds, germination. Do I have the ability to create seeds out of thin air to promote their germination and growth? Is this a plant-based devil fruit? Jon had some guesses in his mind, but he was not entirely sure. After all, devil fruits have all kinds of strange abilities. Although he created seeds that sprouted, it was really hard to say whether they were plant-based devil fruits or not. Thinking of this, Jon was ready to continue trying. He didn't know exactly how he got the seeds just now. He just kept thinking about using the ability and used it naturally. Call. He breathed out gently to calm down his emotions. He was very experienced in this area. In the past, when he practiced the hockey of wisdom and color, he had always kept his mind calm. In terms of controlling his emotions, he could still do it easily. Under Jon's control, 2 more seeds appeared in the palms of his hands, and they grew and sprouted rapidly, finally turning into 2 small green trees as long as his index fingers, somewhat similar to the succulents he had seen before. It's really a plant. Could it be that what I ate was really a plant-based devil fruit, used to create plants and control plant growth? It is obvious that he can really create plant seeds and control the rapid growth of plant seeds. This principle cannot be explained. It can only be said that the ability of devil fruit is magical. The ability is amazing, but if it's just that, it's nothing, because for now, it doesn't show much aggressiveness, but I don't know how it will grow. Thinking of this similar ability, the first thing that popped into Jon's mind was the wood release in the Naruto world. The wood release used by Senju Hashirama was definitely an unimaginable development of trees. Aggression. Since it can be produced, I wonder if it can be eliminated. Looking at the small green tree in his hand, Jon had another idea, so he tried to control it again. Under his control, the 2 small green trees that had grown up quickly withered, and finally turned into a pile of waste in his hands. Sure enough, not only could he control the growth of plants, he could also make the plants he created disappear. Jon was overjoyed. Although he had just gained such an ability, he was already certain that the devil fruit he had eaten had extraordinary abilities and had great potential. In other words, this time he made the right bet. As long as he could develop this plant-based devil fruit, it had endless potential. The only question is whether he can develop the power of this fruit. Keep trying. More than an hour later, Jon lay there, too tired to lift his hands. The small cabin room is now full of plants and trees, half of which are green plants. The rest of the plants are also of various types, including flowers, plants and trees. The largest is a green plant that is nearly 1 meter tall, small tree. All the plants here were created by Jon. He kept using his abilities for more than an hour. In the end, he was exhausted and could no longer use his abilities. But unfortunately, he also discovered a problem. So far, the highest plant he could create was the small green tree that was nearly 1 meter tall. If he wanted to make it grow, he couldn't do it. But how aggressive can a 1 meter tall plant be? An impatient person would definitely be disappointed in this situation, but Jon did not have such thoughts, and was instead very happy. You must know that this is only the first time he has used his ability. He has just eaten the devil fruit and it is his first time to use his ability. To be able to reach this level has exceeded his expectations. Not all devil fruits are like natural devil fruits, which are invincible and very powerful right from the start. Most devil fruits are very weak at the beginning. Just like the rubber fruit, at first glance, this fruit's ability is actually very average. But in the hands of the protagonist Luffy, the power displayed is really amazing. Who would have thought that a rubber fruit can be developed to that extent? Therefore, even if his fruit does not show too much aggression now, Jon will not be anxious. In terms of imagination, is he still inferior to these natives? Before entering the Navy headquarters, Jon was surprised to find that the remaining devil fruit he had eaten had rotted. His father hid it for 3 years without rotting, but after he took a bite, it quickly rotted. This feature of devil fruit really amazed Jon. Suddenly, a horn sounded on the warship. Jon's expression suddenly changed, and he immediately dressed neatly and walked out of the room quickly. Line up. On the warship, Rear Admiral Noel, who was in charge of picking up and dropping off, looked serious and shouted loudly to the soldiers who came to the deck. This order caused soldiers from all over the South China Sea to fall into chaos. Previously, everyone was on a warship from different branches. They were not familiar with each other, and most of them did not even know anyone else. In this case, it is undoubtedly difficult to complete the queue quickly. There were 36 soldiers in total. You squeezed in, and I squeezed in. It took more than a minute to form a line according to height. Look at your performance. You are still selected by your respective branches. You are so slow even in lining up. With your level, how did you fight against pirates before? How dare you come to compete with the headquarters? Noel's scolding was stern and merciless. No one dared to contradict him. To everyone, the Rear Admiral of the Navy headquarters was already the highest-ranking officer they had ever seen in their lives. In the huge South China Sea, there are more than 30 naval branches. The reason why more than 30 people came is because some naval branches did not recommend personnel. You are about to enter the headquarters base. If you want to stay in the headquarters in a year, you must put in all your efforts. During the assessment, those instructors will not show mercy to you. When Jon heard this, his heart moved, and he accurately grasped the message in Norval's words. 1 year later, Noel said that he wanted to stay after 1 year. Does that mean that everyone who comes to the Navy headquarters will have the opportunity to study here for 1 year, which is not what his father thought, may be eliminated? Thinking about it this way, it is quite reasonable. Even though everyone is from the South China Sea and cannot compare with the Navy of the Grand Line, it does not mean that the talent will be inferior. After all, the personnel are recommended and will have some foundation. If this was the case, Jon was relieved. He was not afraid of the assessment, but knowing this, he felt confident. Marine Fando, Navy Headquarters. The warship slowly entered the Navy Headquarters base. Looking from a distance, Jon could see the huge building complex of the Navy Headquarters base. Jon, who had not left the South China Sea for more than 10 years, was immediately shocked by its magnificence after seeing the Navy Headquarters fortress. Even though he was far away, Jon could still clearly see the most special building in the center of the fortress, a huge and towering city wall, at least dozens of meters high. 2 large Chinese characters, Navy, were engraved on the wall, giving people a sense of it. A sense of solemn solemnity. On top of this towering city wall building, there are several layers of simple buildings. When the two are superimposed, they become spectacular and majestic. In addition to this most conspicuous main building, there are 4 tall observation towers around it. Each observation tower has a white Navy flag flying, as if guarding the Navy headquarters. In addition, there are many building groups, although not as tall as the main building at the rear, but they are also located all over the island, thus forming a magnificent naval headquarters. Is this the Navy headquarters? The soldiers who came from Nane with Jon were extremely shocked when they saw the Navy headquarters. Compared with the Navy headquarters base, their branch base in Nane was no different from a mud house in the countryside. Rear Admiral Noel smiled slightly when he saw the shock displayed by these soldiers. When he first came to the Navy headquarters, he was just as shocked as they were. Fortunately, he stayed at the Navy headquarters and achieved what he has achieved along the way. Although these soldiers in front of them can stay here for a short time, in the end, it is estimated that most of them will leave the headquarters and be dispatched to other branches. The warship quickly approached the island and soon came to a crescent-shaped port. In front of the port, rows of warships docked. At a glance, there were at least a dozen ships, showing the military power of the Navy headquarters. The warship stopped at the port, and Major General Noel immediately shouted, "Everyone, take your belongings and get off the ship immediately." It was past 8 o'clock in the morning. Jon disembarked with everyone. When he came all the way, he saw many soldiers at the Navy headquarters base. Although there were many people, they were all moving and doing things in an orderly manner. Especially the port location is very busy, with warships coming and going, and a large number of naval soldiers maintaining order at the port. When he first came to the Navy headquarters, Jon followed the troops without saying a word. He did whatever he was told to do and refused to do anything he was told not to do. "Everyone, follow immediately." After giving the order, Naval led Jon and others quickly from the port towards the interior of the base. After passing through many buildings, they came to a wide square. This square is very large, with an area of at least 100,000 square meters. Jon has never seen such a large playground. There are a lot of equipment in it. It seems that it should be used for training of naval soldiers. The square is also divided into several areas. Jon and the others were taken to one of them, and there were already many people standing here. Most of them were wearing Navy uniforms, and some were wearing casual clothes. They were standing together. It was obvious that they were not in the same style, and they should be from different places. After a little thought, you can guess their identities. They should be recommended soldiers from various branches of the Navy like them. "Norwell, you are the slowest this time. We have been waiting for you for more than an hour." Several generals wearing Navy justice coats said with a smile to Major General Noel, who led Jon and the others. Noel smiled and greeted the other generals, while Jon and the others were arranged to stand with the others. After Jon stood still, he saw that everyone else was standing upright, not squinting, and in line with the others, looking at the people around them calmly. Not long after, a group of people suddenly came over, led by a tall, muscular middle-aged man with short purple hair, wearing a white suit and a Navy justice coat. General Zephyr. After this person appeared, Noel and other naval admirals, as well as the surrounding naval soldiers, all shouted respectfully. "Is he Zephyr?" Jon's pupils shrank and he stared at the purple-haired middle-aged man. His heart was shocked. This was a naval admiral, a real admiral, one of the strongest men at the pinnacle of the Navy. Regarding Zephyr, Jon, who has watched the One Piece anime, has a deep understanding of him. This admiral is definitely a legend. Now that he can see it in person, to be honest, he is really a little excited. Zephyr nodded to the other admirals and soldiers, and then walked to the front of the new soldiers lined up. Zephyr, who had been depressed recently, suddenly felt much better when he saw the group of young faces in front of him. As a naval admiral, although Zephyr has the title of non-killer, he is a man who firmly believes in the justice of the Navy. Although he will not kill pirates, he will never be soft and will catch them when they need to be caught. It's just that this year, his wife, children, and family were killed by pirates, which made him very disappointed in the Navy. He was a Navy admiral. How big of a mistake did it have to be for the admiral's relatives to be killed? Because of this, Zephyr was dissatisfied with the Navy headquarters and wanted to resign and leave the Navy. However, Sora, Sengoku and others tried their best to persuade him to stay, so he chose to trust the Navy again and chose to stay. He retained the position of Navy Admiral and became a Navy Admiral. Navy Chief Instructor. With Zephyr's strength and ability, even though it was his first time as an instructor, everyone in the Navy had full confidence in him. They made him the chief instructor as soon as he came up, and specially selected the most elite young people in the new batch of the Navy. "Man, let him teach. Since you are here, it means you know what will happen next." Zephyr did not show any official authority, and spoke concisely and straight to the point. "In the next few days, you will be guided and evaluated by me. After a few days, I will select the best among you for a one-day training, years of guidance and training. If you want to be my student, your performance will be crucial next. When I choose people, I don't choose the strongest among you. I want to choose the ones with the best overall quality. So, in the coming time, even a small detail may determine your fate. Understand, understand." After all, this was the first time they had come together. The soldiers present were obviously unable to respond neatly and uniformly. They were scattered and procrastinated. Zephyr's face turned cold and he asked again, "Do you understand?" "Clear, understand, clear." After dozens of times in a row, everyone finally gave the same answer. Zephyr nodded with satisfaction and said with a serious face, "I have not read your information. Maybe among you, there are some who have made extraordinary achievements, some who are talented, and some who have special abilities, but I want to tell you your business, no matter what your status was before, when you get here, your status will be the same. From now on, your identity is that of freshman, and I am your instructor. There is only one thing you have to do. Obey my orders. Whatever I ask you to do, you must do it. Even if it is wrong, you must complete it. If you have any opinions, please bring them up with me afterwards." Understand, clear. Once again, they answered unanimously that obeying orders is not a problem for those present. Everyone is a soldier, and soldiers must obey orders. This is basic. Today, many of you have come to the Navy headquarters for the first time. The first point I want to teach you is only 2 words. Justice. Justice is only 2 words, but it is what I and everyone in the Navy have always believed in. Many people have their own purposes for becoming a Navy, but no matter what your purpose was before, now, you must keep my words in mind. Before doing anything, you must abide by justice and keep the justice in your heart. Only in this way, only you are qualified to be an excellent naval soldier." Even though the death of his family was a huge blow to Zephyr, he still has not forgotten his justice. Now he has become a naval instructor. He believes that the most important education is to let students know what justice is. Justice is the motto of the Navy, which can be seen from the Navy's Justice Code. Many people may have different understandings of justice, but the vast majority of naval officers are soldiers who believe in justice. Just when Jon thought Zephyr would continue speaking at length, Zephyr suddenly stopped and changed the subject. Now, everyone obeys my order and starts a long-distance run around this square, carrying 100 kilograms of weight. Remember, I want you to run until you no longer have the strength to stand up. As soon as these words came out, many people looked at each other in confusion. Obviously, they didn't expect that Zephyr would change so quickly. One moment he said this, and the next moment he asked them to start running long distance. However, some people hesitated, and others obeyed the order. A man with a cold expression who was more than 2 meters tall, wearing a navy hat, a red shirt, and carrying a long knife came out and took the lead to walk to the place where the weights were placed. Pick up the weight and start trotting. Someone took the lead, and the others also acted quickly, picking up the weights next to them and starting running. Oh, it's really troublesome. It's just the first day here and it won't stop. A lazy voice sounded not far away. Jon's hearing was sharp and he turned his head to see who was so bold. What caught his eye was a man who was also wearing a navy hat, a yellow shirt, and short ear-length hair. He was no shorter than the first person who stood up, walking slowly towards the weight-bearing area. What worried Jon was that this person had a very distinctive appearance, with a lazy look and a face like an ape. When he thought of this first Zephyr student, a familiar name appeared in Jon's mind. Is this guy Kizaru? Although he was confused, now was not the time to hesitate. Jon followed the others to the weight-bearing area and carried the 100-kilogram weight on his back. If it were the old world and running with a 100-kilogram weight on his back, Jon would definitely spray the instructor to death. This is not life-saving. But in this world, 100 kilograms is really nothing to a trained naval soldier. The physical fitness of people in this world is really good, especially after training. The upper limit is even scarier. Take Jon himself for example. He is only 17 years old this year. He can lift 400 to 500 kilograms of objects easily, and can bear 1,000 kilograms. Running with 100 kilograms of weight on his back is completely childish. Following in the center of the large army, Jon ran slowly and unhurriedly. At this time, he could finally look at these students in the same group with him unscrupulously. In addition to the man who he guessed might be Kizaru just now, he was also deeply impressed by the man who came out first. His cold appearance and strong momentum were very consistent with the image of the later naval admiral, Akainu. That person is most likely the future admiral, the marshal after the Warring States period, Akainu and Sakazuki. According to the description in the One Piece manga, Akainu and Kizaru were already monsters during their lifetime after joining the Navy. It is not known whether they have eaten devil fruits during this period. Although he knew that Akainu and Kizaru would be in the same issue as him, Jon was not sure whether they were espers at this time, but he guessed that it was more likely that they were espers. Everyone started running. The circle of this huge square would be at least tens of thousands of meters long. However, for naval soldiers with amazing physiques, it would still take a certain amount of time to run until they could not stand up. Zephyr stood with his lieutenant. Except for a few soldiers around him, generals such as Noel and others had already left. Their task was to pick up and drop off, and they left naturally after completing the task. It is true that the Navy headquarters has a military academy, but it has always been an institution for training new recruits. The highest military rank is the Major General level, so when Zephyr comes, he will naturally be the highest. However, because Zephyr retreated from the front line to the rear, his former deputy general was a lieutenant general and was not brought here. Now his deputy general is a commodore. He used to be an experienced instructor, and now he is here to assist Zephyr. Freeman, you should have read the information on these new recruits, right? Zephyr asked Lieutenant General Freeman. Freeman nodded and replied, yes, I have read the information of these people. There are a total of 196 people. There are a total of 136 people from all over the world. The remaining 60 people are all their branches and headquarters from the Grand Line. Zephyr asked again, you have read their information and you should have a rough idea of their situation. There should be some outstanding ones among them, right? Freeman immediately showed excitement. General Zephyr, since I have been an instructor, I have never seen any class of students that can compare with this class of students. There are too many outstanding students among them. Freeman is several years older than Zephyr. He has also been an instructor for more than 10 years and has taught more than 10 recruits. But he has never taught such outstanding recruits as this year. The people here, all have their own characteristics, and there is no mediocrity. He knew very well that this situation could occur entirely because of Zephyr's status as a naval admiral and instructor, which was an irresistible temptation for any naval soldier. What's more, this time's recruitment is worldwide, which is different from the previous local recruitment of recruits. In fact, there are more recruits in this class, but other recruits are not qualified to join this ranks and will be trained by other instructors. The recruits here are all carefully selected, the best among the best. Tell me, Zephyr is also very interested. This is his first time as an instructor this year, and he also wants to know the level of his future students. Freeman waved to the soldiers behind him, and several documents were immediately delivered to his hands. He first took out one and gave it to Zephyr. General Zephyr, this is the information of Monkey D. DeLog, the son of Lieutenant General Garp. Although there is no outstanding information on it, as the son of Lieutenant General Garp, his talent must not be bad. Quote, I've met that guy Garp's son a few times. Zephyr is very familiar with Garp, and naturally knows that Garp brought his son to the Navy headquarters. He has met him a few times, but he didn't pay too much attention to him before and didn't know him very well. The most outstanding recruits in this batch should be these two. After handing two more pieces of information into Zephyr's hands, Freeman looked excited and said, I have coached recruits for so many years, but I have never seen such outstanding recruits. These two people will definitely become an important force in the Navy in the future. Oh, Zephyr was immediately interested. He knew that Freeman had been coaching for many years and had a lot of experience. Sometimes he could judge a person's talent and potential well based on information. For him to say this, it was enough to explain the problem. He picked up the information and read it carefully. Soon, he frowned. Borisolino and Sakaski are both from the North Sea. They have just joined the Navy. They are devil fruit users, and they are also users of the natural system. Zephyr was surprised. These two people were actually from Bahai, and they were both nature-type ability users. Nature-type devil fruits are the rarest. Two natural-type recruits came at once. Even he was surprised. The evaluations given by the Bahai branch are all the best. General Zephyr, their upper limit is very high. Freeman said. Zephyr also thinks so. Just for natural ability users, the upper limit is already very high. What's more, the tests of these two people in other aspects are all optimal, which shows that his talent is not limited to ability. Not even Zephyr has ever encountered such a recruit. Silently memorizing all the information about these two people, Zephyr has decided to teach them personally. These two young people definitely have the potential to become naval admiral candidates. Besides them, are there any other capable users in this issue? With the rise of the pirate age, devil fruit has gradually become known to the world, and the power of ability users is also well known. Freeman replied. Besides them, there are two others, but they are all animal-type ability users. Being able to become an Esper is also an opportunity. Although I don't agree with taking devil fruits, because it will reduce the fault tolerance of people fighting at sea, but it is inevitable that the potential of Espers is stronger than ordinary people. Zephyr himself is not an Esper. Although he doesn't agree with devil fruit ability users, he also understands the potential of Espers. He became an instructor to train students with potential for the Navy headquarters, and Espers are people with potential. Besides these, are there any special talents? Zephyr asked again. Freeman answered without thinking. Speaking of which, there really is a special talent. He is a recruit from Nane. He is also the youngest among this batch of recruits. He is only 17 years old. According to the reported information, he is born with a strong sense of knowledge and domineering. Born with the domineering power of knowledge and knowledge. Zephyr's expression changed. He was a master of domineering himself, so he naturally knew the special nature of domineering. Domineering requires aptitude and understanding, and training to become stronger the day after tomorrow. The Overlord domineering spirit is a natural talent, but he has never seen anyone born with the knowledge-colored domineering spirit. Yes, when I saw the information, I couldn't believe it, but people in the branch shouldn't dare to lie. Which one? Freeman pointed at Jon, who was running in the crowd, and said to Zephyr, General Zephyr is the black-haired boy. His name is Lyons Jon, the son of the commander of the South China Sea Branch 47 base. Zephyr stared at Jon for a while, and then said, Okay, I understand. Pay special attention to the people you just mentioned. Yes. Zephyr walked to the center and observed all the running students to see their reactions and changes. In the blink of an eye, half an hour passed. I ran non-stop for half an hour, but no one stopped. I still kept running with high morale. Jon was slightly out of breath. He had been exercising in a planned way since he was a child. Running was not a problem for him at all. If he ran without any restrictions, with his current physique, it would be no problem for him to run all day and night. Speed up, are you taking a walk? Everyone, speed up now. At this moment, Zephyr suddenly shouted and asked everyone to start running faster. Naturally, no one dared to disobey his order, and everyone speeded up immediately. The originally stable team changed immediately after the speed became faster. Many people mustered up their strength and prepared to compete for the front position, because they had not forgotten what Zephyr just said and wanted to perform as well as possible. The difference in physical strength and speed was quickly reflected, and the team quickly spread out. Too slow, keep accelerating. Gradually, the gap became apparent. In the first half hour of running, everyone was running smoothly, but in the next half hour, under Zephyr's constant urging to speed up, the stronger ones still maintained their advantage, while the relatively weak ones still maintained their advantage. Already starting to fall behind, even a few laps slower than the others. Time passed slowly, and suddenly, one person finally couldn't hold on anymore and fell down while running. Medic! Freeman, who had been observing from the side, suddenly yelled and led the recruits, who rushed to the end, carrying him to the side for treatment. As the first person fell, it was like a switch was turned on, and one after another others couldn't hold on and fell to the ground, but there were still many people who persisted with grinning teeth. Under Zephyr's continuous shouting, the speed of many recruits has reached high speed. In Jon's previous world, sprinting 100 meters could not match their current speed. Call. A gust of wind blew past him. Jon curled his lips and looked at the red figure in front of him. Is there something wrong with this guy, the steely straight man? By now, nearly half of the nearly 200 people had fallen. Jon's legs were heavy and he was panting. However, he was not at the end. Many people now were no better than him. Just seeing the man in red, who was still in the first place, with a majestic appearance, and who looked suspiciously like a Kainu, Jon couldn't help but curse inwardly. This guy is really a monster. He has been running first since the beginning. After such a long time, Jon has carefully calculated that this guy has run 8 more laps than him. The key is that he can't see any signs of decline. Jon has always felt that he is not bad, but compared with this guy, he is really weak in terms of physique. This also makes him more certain that this man in red is 100% a Kainu. Speaking of a Kainu, we have to talk about another monster, Kizaru. Compared to the serious and powerful Akainu, Kizaru is much more low-key. He runs in a hurry and looks around while running, like a tourist sightseeing. But his behavior made Jon depressed. They didn't even pay attention, but they ran faster than them, and they did so easily. It's really a series of people comparing each other to death. Jon finally understood why Akainu and Kizaru were said to be monsters among their batch of recruits. In the Navy headquarters, where there are many talented people, they are far ahead of others. If they are not monsters, what are they? After trying hard to calm down his emotions, Jon was already close to his limit. At the same time, he also found that he had really been sitting in a well and looking at the sky. When watching anime in the past, he would always have the illusion that a vice admiral was nothing more than that, so in his eyes, the target was always an admiral, Yonko level. But now it seems that he became wise much earlier than others and trained very early, but compared with some monsters in this world, he is still far behind. Akainu and Kizaru have become so powerful just after joining the Navy. What level will those more powerful naval officers reach? After a while, more and more people fell, and now there were less than 50 people still running. Jon was also covered in sweat, and his legs were as heavy as lead. If it weren't for the strong will support, he would have fallen long ago. Hey, little brother, can't you hold on anymore? When Jon was running in a daze and his speed had slowed down to a slow level, a voice suddenly came to his ears. Jon turned his head unhappily, only to see a pouting face winking at him with a vulgar look on his face. Brother, you've already performed well. If you can't hold on, stop holding on. Don't make any mistakes and the gains will outweigh the losses. Wukow, what the hell are you? Of course, Jon couldn't speak at this time. He was holding his breath now. If he opened his mouth, he would definitely not be able to hold on, so he could only curse in his heart. Relax, relax, little brother, I think you are quite powerful. Let me meet you. My name is Porosalino. What is your name? It's indeed this guy. After hearing the other party's self-introduction, Jon thought to himself, sure enough, this wretched Jin is no one else but Kizaru. Just watching Kizaru not only look relaxed, but also able to run and talk to him at the same time, this physical strength really drove Jon crazy. Brother, why don't you answer me? I'll tell you. Jon was already very tired, but Kizaru's voice kept ringing in his ears, making his head buzzing and even more exhausted. Looking at Kizaru with red eyes, if looks could kill, Jon would have killed Kizaru hundreds of times. Oh, what a scary look, little brother, you look at me like that, it's so scary. Jon's height had not yet reached Kizaru's chest, and he gritted his teeth when he saw Kizaru patting his chest with a scared look on his face. In fact, he had been practicing his hockey since childhood and was not an impulsive character. But at this moment, he was exhausted and almost couldn't hold on anymore. In addition, Kizaru was so annoying that he really couldn't keep calm. Brother, let me tell you, running also requires skills. Look at you now, you can't even maintain normal breathing. If you continue to hold on like this, it will not be a good thing for you. Enough is enough. Pocky. Jon was indeed about to lose it, but after listening to Kizaru's persuasion, he became even more angry and unwilling to give up. Whirring, trying hard to adjust his breathing, the already slow pace slowed down a bit. Hey, little brother, why are you slowing down again? You are already at the end. Are you ready to give up? Give up on your pimp. Cursing again in his mind, Jon calmed himself down, selectively ignored Kizaru's words and listened to the sounds around him. With his outstanding sense of domineering, he heard various sounds around him, the nearest one was Kizaru's voice. From the feedback of Kizaru's heartbeat, it seemed that this guy was not exhausted, his breathing was gentle, and his heartbeat was only slightly faster. This pervert. In addition to Kizaru, Jon also heard the voices of other recruits. He was shocked to find that besides Kizaru and Akainu, there was someone whose voice was also very relaxed, which was no worse than Kizaru and Akainu. There are two other people whose heartbeats are worse than these three, but much stronger than the others. Other than that, the rest of them were breathing very heavily, not much better than him. At this time, if you persist a little longer, you will win. Zephyr is watching from the side, and you must persist. Everyone knew that when Zephyr asked them to run, it was a test, so until the end, no one was willing to give up this run that could give them extra points. If one could be eliminated at this time, it would be a victory. Brother, look, another person has fallen. Tisk tisk, you are really tenacious. You have such willpower at a young age. You will definitely succeed in the future. I am very optimistic about you. For people like Kizaru who had eaten the shiny fruit, this kind of running was really just like playing. He was really bored and came to talk to Jon because he found that among this group of people, Joe seemed to be the only one. Well, it's the most interesting. Jon didn't want to pay attention to Kizaru, nor did he have the energy to pay attention to him, so he continued running. Suddenly he stumbled, his legs were out of control, and his whole body fell forward. Hey, be careful, little brother. Seeing that Jon was about to fall, Porosalino suddenly supported Jon and led him to run slowly. A stagger shocked Jon, and he glanced at Kizaru in shock. He was surprised that Kizaru would support him. Brother, I advise you not to be pushy. It's very comfortable just lying on the ground. Why do you have to suffer this? Jon's newly rising gratitude dissipated instantly. Mopey, now that I'm talking about it, why did you still hold me up just now? What are you doing? Suddenly, a loud shout rang in the ears of Jon and the others, and an instructor next to Zephyr walked over and shouted sternly. Nothing. With a bright smile on his face, Kizaru let go of his hand, while Jon stabilized his body and moved forward slowly. That little guy named Jon has a good will. Seeing Jon's condition and still running, Zephyr nodded with satisfaction. However, he won't be able to hold on much longer. Jon really couldn't hold on any longer. He felt like his body was starting to float. At this time, if someone touched him even slightly, he would fall to the ground, but his tenacious will supported him and he tried his best to move forward. Now she is no longer running, but moving step by step, like an old lady in her 70s or 80s. After running around again, Sakaski frowned slightly when he saw Jon moving. Although in his eyes, this young man was not worth mentioning, he was extremely impressed by his willpower. Not only Sakaski, but many other people who were still running looked at Jon with admiration. But there are also people who are disdainful and feel that Jon is overestimating his abilities and is already out of control and is still pretending. Jon naturally didn't know what other people thought of him. He entered a wonderful state at this time. Suddenly, he heard countless noisy sounds, not by his ears, but by his heart. Countless sounds poured into his consciousness. He had never heard such a special sound. He couldn't understand what these sounds were expressing, but he felt that these sounds were very close to him, as if they were his kind. Cheer him up. What is this sound? Who is it? Who are you, talking to me? The noisy sounds did not disgust Jon, and after these sounds appeared, strange changes occurred. Jon only felt a mysterious power pouring into his body, and the icy cold breath continued to swim in his body, allowing his tired and heavy body to quickly regain its strength and become extremely relaxed in an instant. This is Jon, who had regained his strength, was extremely shocked. He tried to exert force, but the heaviness he had just lost was completely gone, and he lifted up quickly. What happened just now? At this moment, he heard the sound just now, which seemed to be cheering, and soon faded away. Jon, who had no idea what was going on, felt that his body had regained its strength, so he didn't hesitate and started running again. Hey, little brother, what's wrong with you? When Porisalino heard the sound, he turned around and was shocked. How could Jon, who was about to lie down at any moment, suddenly start running again as if nothing had happened, and his breathing was much calmer? Jon glanced at him sideways, and he, who had long been dissatisfied, snorted, "It's none of your business." If it were anyone else, he would definitely be angry, but Porisalino had no such idea. He was more interested in Jon, what happened, and how he became so full of life in an instant. Brother, weren't you unable to hold on just now? Why did you suddenly recover again? What did you do? Jon didn't answer because he didn't even figure out what was going on, and how could he possibly answer Porisalino? Jon didn't know what was going on, but someone had already noticed something strange. What happened? How could this happen? The naval soldiers around the square looked at the edges in shock. There were originally large green plants in those places, but those green plants suddenly withered. General Zephyr, the people below reported that many plants around us withered instantly. I wonder what happened. Freeman reported to Zephyr that this sudden change made him very shocked, and he quickly told Zephyr. I've discovered it. Zephyr nodded, his face became very solemn, and his eyes were fixed on Jon, who was running. Did you see that? The boy has regained his strength and his condition has returned. Huh, what? Freeman didn't follow Zephyr's train of thought for a moment, his face full of confusion. Zephyr said, after the surrounding plants withered, the little guy named Jon recovered immediately. Freeman asked doubtfully, General Zephyr, do you mean that the withering of those plants has something to do with that kid? I don't know, but the timing is so coincidental that one has to doubt it. No way. Freeman still didn't believe it. It's okay, you'll know soon. Jon's running again shocked the remaining recruits. They didn't think that Jon was just faking it, but if he wasn't faking it, how could he become lively again in an instant? Hey, little brother, I really underestimated you before. I didn't expect that you still have a chance. Porisalino still looked familiar, chattering beside Jon. No matter whether Jon speeded up or slowed down, he could never get rid of him. Stop! Zephyr's shout sounded, and Jon and the others who were running immediately reduced their speed and slowly stopped. At this moment, there were less than 10 people standing, and only 9 people were left. They slowly gathered together, and those who had fallen before also recovered a little strength after receiving treatment, and left in the same way. Come over. Stay here today. Someone will take you to your respective dormitories later. This is the Navy headquarters. No one is allowed to move around without permission. Today is the first day for Jon and the other recruits to arrive at the Navy headquarters. Zephyr just wants to get to know them, and is not prepared to start his own teaching on the first day. Under the leadership of the instructors, Jon and others walked around a few times and arrived at a dormitory area. When he came to the dormitory area, Jon saw many recruits who were like them and dressed differently from the Navy soldiers. These people were also recruits of this batch like them. The only difference is that Jon and the others belong to the special recruitment sequence, while these people are ordinary soldiers recruited by the Navy headquarters. Jon and the others were brought to a 3-story building, and Freeman said, "This is where you will live for the next year. 2 people per dormitory has been assigned. The list is posted on the door next to it. You guys go find it." Okay, dismissal. Following Freeman's order, the atmosphere suddenly became relaxed. Everyone took their belongings and ran to the door to check the location of their dormitories. Jon was not in a hurry. After others had seen it, he walked over and took a look, and soon saw his name. 303. Jon saw his dormitory number, then took the small bag he only carried and walked to the 3rd floor. When Jon came to 303 and pushed the door open, he found that there was already someone inside. A man over 2 meters tall was sitting in the living room. "Monkey D. Dorag," leans Jon. "There are 2 rooms here, you choose one first." Jon scanned the house. Although it was a dormitory, the area was not small. It had everything it needed, and there were 2 rooms. "Okay, thank you, I'll choose the one on the left." Without being polite, Jon pointed to the room on the left and said, "The remaining room is mine." Dorag smiled slightly. The 2 of them entered the room separately and started to clean up. In fact, there was nothing to clean up. The place was very clean and had everything it should have. It was definitely a VIP level treatment, and you could really check in with your bags. Jon sat in the room, feeling uneasy. He never thought that his roommate would be Monkey D. Drago. He was very confused. Drago was also in the same issue as Akainu and Kizaru. A student. Why wasn't it mentioned in the plot? Although it was his first time to meet Dorag, Jon was no stranger to this person. He was the son of the naval hero Garp, the father of Straw Hat Luffy, the leader of the Revolutionary Army, and the most evil man in the world. Each of these identities shows how terrifying this man is. Dorag is definitely a boss-level man in the pirate world. He was in the same issue as Akainu and Kizaru, but he actually became a roommate with Dorag. This guy seems to be about the same age as Kizaru, but as Garp's son, he actually became a student in this issue. Jon was very surprised. However, judging from Dorag's age, he should not have become the leader of the Revolutionary Army at this time. Perhaps his revolutionary ideas have not yet been born, otherwise, he would not still be in the Navy. "Jon, do you mind if I call you that?" While Jon was deep in thought, Dorag walked to his door and stood at the door looking at him. "Of course." Jon shrugged and said, "You look tired." Dorag asked. Jon nodded and said, "Yes, when I was in the South China Sea, I always thought that my strength was very good, but after I came here, I realized that I used to sit in a well and watch the sky. Compared with you, I am far behind." Quote, "No, you just haven't mastered your abilities yet," Dorag said. Jon was stunned when he heard this. "What do you mean by this?" Dorag smiled slightly and said, "When I was running before, I noticed that you were obviously exhausted, but suddenly you regained your strength. This is very abnormal. It should be your special ability. Therefore, you have the devil fruit ability, right?" Jon said, "Yes, but I don't know what kind of fruit I ate. I only know that it can control the growth of plants." He didn't hide his ability. People would know it soon anyway, so it wouldn't hurt to tell him now. A plant-based devil fruit. Dorag's expression suddenly changed, and he looked at Jon in shock. "Were you responsible for the situation over there in the square?" "What?" Jon looked stunned. He really didn't know what happened. Dorag said, "When I left, I found that all the plants around the square were withered, but before we entered, the plants were still healthy." Jon asked in shock, "Are you telling the truth?" Dorag was even more surprised. "You don't know?" Jon stopped talking. Of course he didn't notice, otherwise he wouldn't have asked. Now that Dorag found out, it was definitely true. It was very likely that all the plants around the square withered because of him. But why does this happen? Jon recalled the situation at that time. He had always been strange. He was clearly exhausted before and had no energy left, but suddenly he got a force that drove away his fatigue and restored his strength. He didn't know what was going on at the time, but now listening to what Dorag said, his change must be related to the withering of those plants. But why did those plants wither and why did he recover again? The sound, yes, it was a sound. Just when I was about to fall, I suddenly heard countless voices, very kind. Thinking of this, Jon's pupils shrank suddenly. His domineering power had been there since he was a child, and it was very powerful, but that time in the square was different. He had never heard such a voice before. The cordial and cheering exchange was completely different from the sounds he had heard before, as if the other party also felt his presence. It is absolutely impossible to achieve this level with just seeing and hearing say hockey. Seeing and hearing say hockey can feel the breath, but it is absolutely impossible to communicate. One possibility that Jon thought of was that the sound he heard was the sound made by the plants around the square. Those plants seemed to sense his presence, so they communicated with him cordially and encouraged him. After he regained his strength, those voices disappeared. Did they transfer their life energy to me, so I could recover? This kind of speculation is very ridiculous, but for some reason, Jon feels it is very reliable. After eating the plant-type devil fruit, to a certain extent, he is already a plant in his own right. Perhaps because of this, he can hear the sounds of plants when using his hockey. Not only that, he could also feel the emotions and thoughts of the plants, so he heard the kindness and encouragement of those voices. Such a situation has never happened before when he used the hockey of the observation color. This happened after he ate the devil fruit. It was the devil fruit's ability that allowed him to communicate with plants and hear what they meant. Chapter 11. What did you think of? Dorag couldn't help asking Jon as he was thinking deeply. It's nothing. To be honest, I haven't figured out what's going on. Jon didn't say his guess, it was just his guess. He couldn't be sure yet whether it was what he thought, and he didn't want to expose his trump card casually. Dorag's eyes flashed, and he could see that Jon must have thought of something, but he did not expose it. After all, the two of them were only roommates, and they could not exchange secrets. Jon always felt a little uncomfortable being stared at by Dorag. Knowing Dorag's experience, he didn't want to get too close to Dorag. This guy could betray the Navy at any time and become the leader of the Revolutionary Army. When he came to this world, although Jon was not used to some aspects of the world government, he still had a sense of belonging to the Navy. After all, his father was a Navy, and it was only in the Navy that he had the opportunity to grow. Therefore, even if the Navy is affiliated with the world government, there may still be darkness, but he has never thought of leaving the Navy, and naturally he does not want to be influenced by Dorag, the leader of the Revolutionary Army. The dormitory fell into silence again. Headquarters base, Marshal's office. Cyborg Kong, who has served as a naval marshal for many years, is now a qualified naval marshal. Sora is a very strong man with a broad chest. His tawny skin reflects his stamina. His gray hair and beard, muscles all over his body, and scars on his face make him look like he does not look like someone who handles copywriting and sits in an office. A marshal is more like a leader in combat and an extremely tough fighter. In addition to Marshal Kong, there are 4 other people in the office, including Navy Admiral Zephyr who just came in. The 5 people present here represent the current center of power of the Navy headquarters. In addition to Marshal Sora and Admiral Zephyr, there are 3 others, namely Admiral Sengoku, Vice Admiral Garp, and Vice Admiral Suru. Sengoku, Garp, he and Zephyr were all soldiers who joined the Navy in the same period. Sengoku and Zephyr have become admirals, and Garp and he have become vice admirals. To be precise, these 2 people are more like an admiral candidate. These 5 people are not only the most powerful beings in the Navy, but they are also the most powerful ones. Garp, are you still unwilling to be promoted to general? Sora asked with a serious look on Garp who was sitting still and eating senbei lazily. This was the first time he had asked Garp this question. Garp waved his hands with a look of disgust. Inappropriate, inappropriate, I feel so comfortable now. If I become a Navy admiral, I will not only have so many worries, but also have to fight for those guys. I won't have so much time. Ahem. Warring States next to him coughed twice and glared at Garp. Be careful what you say, be careful what you say. Hey. Garp looked indifferent. Sora had long been accustomed to Garp's character, so he naturally wouldn't be angry, but felt quite helpless. Garp was good at everything, but his unstinting personality gave him a headache. As the Marshal of the Navy headquarters, Sora naturally has to consider the Navy. Currently, there is still a vacancy among the 3 standard admirals. Looking at everyone in the Navy headquarters, the one who is most qualified to become an admiral is Garp, but this guy is unwilling to become an admiral, so he relies on the position of lieutenant general. If it were anyone else, Sora would definitely try every means to make him an admiral. 3 admirals would be a stronger deterrent to pirates than 2 admirals. It's just Garp's disobedient character, coupled with his origins from the D clan. After careful consideration, Sora did not press forward step by step. He just wanted to wait for Garp to wake up and serve the world government wholeheartedly. As for he, although he has enough qualifications, his strength is still slightly lacking compared to the 3 of Sengoku. Even though Suru also has the ability to be a candidate for general, Sora has never thought of promoting her to admiral, and Suru himself also doesn't want to be a general. Sora was also very depressed. I don't know how many people stared at the position of admiral, but to Garp and the others, it didn't take him seriously. Without worrying too much about this issue, Kong looked at Zephyr and asked, Zephyr, you have met the elites selected by each branch. What do you think? Are there any talents with special potential? Kong is also very concerned about this new generation of recruits. This time the recruitment movement is much larger than in previous years. The next generation of the Navy, but he, the Navy Marshal, must pay serious attention to and consider it. Warring states, Garp and he also looked at Zephyr, and they were equally curious. Zephyr replied, from what I know so far, it's very good. There are many outstanding talents. It's not much worse than what we had back then. Oh, as soon as he said this, Kong was very surprised. You must know that Zephyr and his team produced 2 Navy admirals and several lieutenant generals in that issue, including outstanding talents like Garp and he. That issue was definitely the most outstanding in decades. Now Zephyr actually compares the students of this batch with theirs at that time, and the conclusion is not bad. Are the students of this batch really outstanding to this extent? Zephyr smiled and said, I didn't expect that there would be so many outstanding young people in this class. It seems that I am lucky. Garp laughed. Ha 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 ha, Zephyr, my son has gone too. Could it be that he is my son you are talking about? Ha 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 ha, you are right. That boy Dorag did inherit me. Some qualifications. Zephyr glanced at Garp, and he was speechless for such a narcissistic Garp. Dorag is indeed good, but I'm not talking about him. Captain looked dissatisfied and hummed, is there anyone better than Dorag? Garp still knows his son very well, but he knows Dolag, and Zephyr does not. And in terms of data, Dolag's characteristics are indeed not as good as those of the other people. Zephyr said, among the students in this batch, there are 2 outstanding ones. One is a shining fruit user and the other is a rockberry fruit user. It is no exaggeration to say that these 2 are far ahead of the others and are monster level. Hearing this, Kong and others' expressions changed, and Garp was even more surprised, 2 natural fruit ability users. Kong said in a deep voice, the shining fruit and the rockberry fruit, these 2 devil fruits, even among the natural fruits, are outstanding and have great potential. They actually appeared at the same time. As a Navy Marshal, Sora has naturally read the Devil Fruit Illustrated book and has a deep understanding of devil fruits. Shiny fruits and rockberry fruits are both very strong in the natural system. Zephyr replied, according to the information, there is nothing wrong. The fruit ability is only one aspect that I pay attention to. Apart from the fruit ability, these 2 people are excellent in all other aspects, especially in terms of physical fitness, which is far superior to other students. According to my estimation, the potential of these 2 people in the future is at least lieutenant generals, and they are also very likely to become candidates for generals or generals. Kong said with a serious face, in this case, you must focus on training these 2 people, and you must pay special attention to the future of the Navy. Of course, Zephyr nodded. Besides them, are there any outstanding talents? General Warring States also asked curiously. There are also 2 animal-type devil fruit users, but besides them, there is one person I pay most attention to. He is very special. Among this batch of students, he is very special. I have never seen him like this before. Special talents. Seeing Zephyr's face look strange, Sora couldn't help but ask, since you said special, it must be special. Tell me, what's special? Born with domineering power, Zephyr said. The other 4 people suddenly changed their expressions, and Sora even exclaimed in shock, he has his own domineering energy. He has Overlord-like domineering power. It's no wonder that Sora and the others were shocked. The Overlord Haki was extraordinary. Among the entire Navy, apart from Cyborg Sora, only Sengoku currently possessed the Overlord Haki. The Overlord Haki meant terrifying potential. If a recruit with Overlord-colored domineering power really appears, it will definitely be of great significance to the Navy, and it will even be more important to them than the 2 natural ability users that Zephyr just mentioned. When Kong and the others misunderstood, Zephyr immediately explained, no, it's not Bawang's Haki, it's Seeing and Hearing's Haki. Seeing and Hearing the domineering spirit. The 4 of them all looked at each other in confusion. They originally thought it was Bawang Haki, but they didn't expect it to be Wisdom Haki. Garp was even more astonished. Domineering power comes naturally from seeing, hearing, and hearing. Isn't this an ability that can be acquired through training? They were surprised because people who are born with the Haki of the knowledge color are so rare, even less than the people who have the Haki of the Overlord color. Strictly speaking, the Overlord color and domineering energy are destined from birth, but this talent is not usually revealed. It is hidden in the body and requires certain conditions to be stimulated. In the eyes of most people, the domineering power of seeing, hearing, and color requires training to be awakened and improved. Kong Ching frowned. I have heard that some people are born with the domineering power of knowledge and knowledge, but I have never confirmed it. I didn't expect it to actually exist. Zephyr said. I was also surprised when I heard about it, but the person who reported the information was the person's father. He definitely didn't have the guts to report it randomly. That young man must have been born with the domineering power of knowledge. Not only that, I discovered that this boy is most likely a devil fruit user, but it's just not in the information. Is he also a person with abilities? Sora was surprised. This class of students was really scary, with all kinds of talents emerging. If this is the case, this person should also be paid special attention to. Maybe his potential is no worse than the other 2. He is not domineering and domineering, although it is a bit disappointing, but he is born with the domineering look of knowledge, which means that the other party is absolutely extraordinary. What's more, Jon comes from a Navy family, and is far more worthy of newcomers than soldiers who join through recruitment, and also worthy of the attention of senior Navy officials like them. Zephyr said. Next, I will devote myself to teaching, and I will not have time to perform the duties of a general. Sora said. Well, since it is your own choice, I will not force it. The current sea is relatively stable, and Sengoku and the others should be able to cope with most troubles. Brother, are you there? Upon hearing this voice, Jon couldn't help but tremble. Dorag, who was sitting in the living room and reading a book, turned to Jon and asked, is he looking for you? Pocky. Jon really didn't want to pay attention, but this guy was already at the door. It wouldn't make sense if he didn't open the door. He could only nod his head depressedly and walked over to open the door. As soon as he opened the door, it turned out to be that unforgettable face. Hey, little brother, we are really destined. I live opposite you. Porosalino pointed to the opposite side and told Jon happily that the dormitories here were arranged similar to the dormitories of Jon's previous university, divided into 2 rows facing each other. Why are you here? Jon asked muffledly. Porosalino looked familiar and said with a smile. Didn't I just find out that Brother Jon lives across the street, so I came to recognize him. No matter what, we are all friends. Glancing at the people standing behind Porosalino, I saw that Akainu was actually here with Kizaru. Seeing Jon's gaze, Porosalino immediately introduced, Brother Jon, this is Sakaski. He came from Beihai with me. Now he lives in the same dormitory with me. You have noticed it before, right? This guy is a monster. Sakaski said stiffly. Sakaski, from the North Sea. Jon also introduced himself seriously. Lien's Jon, from the South China Sea. Come in, everyone. I just want to introduce you to my roommate. After introducing each other, the 4 of them sat down in the living room. Except for Jon, the other 3 were all over 2 meters tall. Fortunately, the ceilings of buildings in this world were very high, otherwise a few of them would have been taller. it seems very crowded. Seeing the enthusiasm of Porosalino chatting with Dorag, and then looking at Sakaski sitting there with a cold face, Jon couldn't help feeling filled with emotion. 2 naval admirals and a future leader of the Revolutionary Army actually sat with him. It was really shocking to think about it. These 3 people will all be men standing at the top of the sea in the future. Looking at these 3 people, Jon suddenly felt an unwillingness to admit defeat in his heart. I, Jon, am no weaker than anyone else in my life. Porosalino and Sakaski stayed in Jon's dormitory for a long time, until someone came to inform them to go to the cafeteria, and the 4 of them went to the cafeteria together. Jon felt awkward walking together with Dorag and the other 3. The 3 of them were much taller than him, so it was really uncoordinated to walk together. In the past, he had always thought that his height of about 1.8 meters was already very good. This was the height he had dreamed of in his previous life. He didn't feel that way when he was in Nane. But after arriving at the Navy headquarters, especially after meeting Akainu and the others, I felt uncomfortable. Anyone who had to raise his head when chatting with others would definitely be very uncomfortable, especially Jon, who was determined not to be better than them in the future. 3 are weak. Now it seems that I don't know what to say in the future, but for now, in terms of height, he is crushed. I don't know if I can grow taller. Jon was very depressed. In this world of pirates, where the average height is over 2 meters, 1.8 meters is indeed too short. He is now 17 years old, and he doesn't know if there is any possibility of continuing to grow. I don't want it to be 3 meters long, but at least it should be over 2 meters long. Jon, who was depressed all the way, followed them. The headquarters is worthy of being the headquarters. The food is really good. There are all kinds of meats, and there are no restrictions. You can eat as much as you want. When they were eating, Jon looked at the 3 people of Porosalino with his mouth open. He finally knew what a cooking bucket was. These 3 people ate by basins, and their food intake was more than twice that of him. Not only did they eat more, but they also ate faster. There is indeed some truth to the saying that food intake represents strength. After dinner, under the leadership of the instructor, Jon and the others went to receive their own training uniforms, tailor-made ones, and began to become familiar with the routes of the Navy headquarters base. It's just that as new recruits, there aren't many places that Jon and the others can go, and there are many secret places that they can't get close to. At this time, Dorag's role came into play, because he had come to the Navy headquarters with his father Garp a long time ago and lived there for a long time, so he was relatively familiar with it, and he had not met Jon from time to time. They introduce. Because these people come from all over the world, but they are also divided into several circles, such as their respective sea areas, and people who are familiar with them will stick together. The 4 of them, like Jon, who come from the South China Sea, the North Sea and the Grand Line respectively, are unique small groups. Early the next morning, Jon and the others were woken up. After getting dressed, they began training under Zephyr's orders. For several days, it was Zephyr who took them through various trainings. He drilled them until they were exhausted every day before letting them return to the dormitory. In the past few days, Zephyr didn't teach them anything, just the simplest training. He practiced it repeatedly. Every time, he practiced it until most of them couldn't stand up. It would not be an exaggeration to say it was devil's training. Under such simple but high-intensity training, the performance gap between each person is getting wider and wider. The most eye-catching ones are Sakaski and Porosalino. No matter how long they practiced, these 2 people were not affected at all and remained in excellent condition. Others, except Dorag, who was hiding deeply, were very tired, especially Jon. Tired to the point of collapse every day. Originally, Jon wanted to study his devil fruit abilities, but he had no free time these days. He was training all the time. Apart from training, he was eating, and finally sleeping. How could he have any spare time to think about developing the fruit abilities? As for the fatigue of training, Jon can still bear it, but what he can't stand is Porosalino. This guy was like a sticky candy. He came to their dormitory to chat every day. The 3 of them were relaxed, but it annoyed Jon so much that he had to force himself to chat with them every time. However, Jon was not without gains. Jon also received a lot of inspiration from the chat with Dorag and the other 3. Porosalino and Sakaski were indeed monsters, but their training skills still had merit, but Jon could only learn from a small part for the time being. After all, his physique was far inferior to these two. Delog, on the other hand, gave him more help, such as how to train with less effort, how to repair after fatigue, and even the skills of how to exert force, all of which were given to Jon without reservation. I have to say that Delog is really much better than him in this regard, and it also gave Jon a lot of experience. His previous exercises were much different from what Delog said. This is knowledge, an experience gap. A few days passed, and it was finally time for reassignment. Zephyr was very straightforward and directly announced the list of students who would be taught by him personally. There were 40 people in total, and Jon and the 4 of them were naturally on the list. Those who were selected were naturally very happy, while those who were not selected were very disappointed. Being a student of a naval admiral not only means that you can get the best education, but also has an additional qualification. After graduation, Zephyr disciples are destined to be very popular. Jon was naturally very happy that he was selected. Although he was certain, he was not as confident as Sakaski and the others. He has observed that many of the students in the same period as him are physically stronger than him, and he has been under great pressure these days. Fortunately, he was selected in the end, which meant that he took the perfect first step at the Navy headquarters. After confirming the students, Zephyr took Jon and his group to the classroom the next day and started class. From today on, I am your instructor, and I will teach you in the next year. Zephyr stood in front of the desk, looking at these young faces in the classroom, and he was quite satisfied. Now he did not need to go to the front line to fight, but stayed behind to teach the young people in the Navy. This was also a matter of great significance. As a senior and teacher, the first lesson I want to teach you is to tell you how cruel this world is. We are the Navy, and the Navy's duty is to protect the sea and the people, so we have to fight against evil. Pirates, criminals, bandits, etc. are all enemies of our Navy. In the battle with the enemy, accompanied by blood and death, everyone may die in battle, including the Navy admiral. Therefore, the world is cruel. Only by mastering power can we better protect the people and maintain the tranquility of the sea. Quote, strength is not just expressed as personal combat effectiveness, but various abilities including personal combat effectiveness. An excellent soldier must not only have sufficient combat effectiveness, but also have rich knowledge, excellent command capabilities, and the ability to assess the situation. Vision, etc. As the best soldiers in this Navy, this is what you have to learn. Zephyr is a man of action. After his short speech, he immediately started teaching. They were all selected elites, and everyone listened carefully to Zephyr's teachings. Zephyr did not teach some obscure knowledge from the beginning, but started from the most basic, and it was all theory. In the next few days, Jon and the others did not go to the training ground. They had been taking classes indoors, ranging from ideological education classes, to maritime combat knowledge, to navigation knowledge, and so on. As a naval admiral, Zephyr was not only powerful in combat, but also outstanding in other aspects. After a few days, the course was never repeated. Jon just lived like this, attending classes during the day and studying the fruit's abilities at other times. After Dolig's unintentional reminder last time, Jon paid more attention to the development direction of his fruit and did experiments. In the end, he really gained a lot. I specially found some plants, and after using up my physical strength, I used my abilities and found that I could indeed absorb the life energy of the plants and convert it into my own physical strength, and even repair my injured body. Not only that, he also discovered that when he used his haki, he could really communicate with plants, understand their thoughts, and also make the plants understand what he meant. This ability is the result of the combination of his fruit ability and the domineering power of seeing and hearing. It is not the ability to listen to the voices of all things, because he can only hear the voices of plants and cannot understand the voices of other living things. And after many research experiments, he also discovered a problem. Before using the knowledge and color domineering communication, he could absorb the life energy of the plants, but it was far less than the life energy that the plants fed back to him after the communication. This is a very strange principle. At first, Jon didn't understand what was going on, but after careful testing and guessing, he gradually understood it. He found that under normal circumstances, although plants can make sounds, they have no intelligence or complex thoughts like humans, as if they were single-celled organisms. When Jon communicates with them using his knowledge and haki, and when they need them, they will be willing to donate their energy to Jon, which will give them more than forcefully plundering and absorbing them. Jon never expected that his own domineering power could actually have such an effect. In fact, Jon was not very satisfied with his knowledge and knowledge haki before, because his knowledge and color haki was natural, but it had no special ability, just like ordinary knowledge and color haki. Jon knew that there were some people like him who were born with the domineering power of knowledge, such as Princess Otahime, Shirahoshi, etc. These people who are born with the domineering power of seeing, hearing, and color all have special abilities. For example, Princess Otahime can feel the other person's thoughts and emotions, and convey the user's own consciousness to others, affecting the minds and thoughts of others and generating strong resonance, and can even change the other person's values and ideology. For the time being, Jon has not yet discovered what is special about his own haki. He can neither influence others nor change ideologies like Princess Otahime, nor can he predict the future. As for listening to the voices of all things, whether it is the domineering power of seeing and hearing, or an innate talent, the anime does not give a clear answer, and Jon does not know, at least he himself does not have this ability. Only now, after eating the devil fruit, has he established this special relationship with plants. It can be regarded as a simplified version of the ability to listen to all things, but he can only understand the sounds of plants. Apart from this, he has not yet discovered the characteristics of his own haki. Although Jon also knows that haki can become stronger through acquired training, but in the more than 10 years of training, except for the enhanced range and more accurate perception, he has not reached the level of Ka-ur, let alone the one who is known as the strongest. The level of Princess Otahime who knows how to see and hear things. Now, his knowledge and color haki has finally shown a great effect, which makes Jon very happy. The combination of fruit ability and knowledge and color haki may be his main training direction in the future. Hey, Jon, you're exercising your fruit abilities again. Porosalino pushed the door open and saw Jon using his ability. He immediately raised his eyebrows and looked around. I got a bunch of plants again, Jon. I think you are suitable to be a gardener and take care of the plants. No one in the world can compare with you. How can you be a navy? Jon snorted coldly. He was stupid. He had been using his abilities frequently recently, but Kizaru had been mocking him. If his strength hadn't allowed him to do so, he would have killed this guy. Kizaru saw that Jon was silent and didn't mind. He walked to the side and poked the plant that Jon had created. I said, what kind of fruit did you eat? Why can you only create these useless plants? They are not offensive at all. You're stupid. Jon cursed in his heart. This was the pain in his heart. So far, apart from being able to absorb the life energy of plants and restore himself, he has indeed not found a suitable way to attack. He has also tried various attack methods, including turning his body into trees, but the key is that he can only create trees a few meters long at most. Even if it is a sudden attack, in this world with amazing physiques, the attack power is weak, can be ignored. The production plant has grown a lot compared to when it first ate the fruit. It can produce a 2-meter tall plant, but the problem is still that it is not very aggressive. Because of this matter, Kizaru mocked him more than once, which made him extremely unhappy. Jon has just eaten the devil fruit, and he doesn't know much about his abilities yet. He is in the research and development stage. If his abilities are not good now, it will be difficult to say in the future. Dorag said a few words for Jon. Jon snorted coldly. Did you hear that? This is what people say. Pelusalino, why do you have to laugh at me? What did you look like when you first ate the fruit? It's not developed through exercise. Only then can the ability gradually become stronger. This is a process. Porosalino looked confused. Really? But why was it that when I first ate the fruit, I was already very powerful, and I didn't develop it through exercise, so I just let nature take its course and became as strong as I am now. Roll. Jon cursed loudly. He discovered that Porosalino was just looking for scolding. God is so strong without training. Hey, it's just a joke, don't be angry. Porosalino chuckled and did not continue teasing. Instead, he came to Jon's side and put his arm around Jon's shoulders. It's a rare day off today. What's the point of being stuck in the dormitory? Let's go out for a walk together. I've been in Marineford for so long and I've never gone out for a walk before. The instructor asked us not to wander around casually. Mistgrass, why did you appear suddenly, Sakaski? Porosalino was startled and followed Jon. He also learned a few catchphrases. Looking at Sakaski who suddenly appeared, he asked, didn't you go to the training ground to exercise? When did you come back? Quote. Sakaski replied calmly, today's training has been completed, so I'm back. Porosalino, Jon is working hard, why do you always disturb him? Porosalino waved his hand with a look of disgust on his face. I have nothing in common with a training freak like you. I think you've become stupid in practice. I want to take you out to see the world. We should combine work and rest. Do you understand? Although he was unhappy with Porosalino's repeated provocations, Jon was quite moved when he heard this suggestion. Indeed, it has been more than half a month since they arrived at the Navy headquarters. Apart from the training grounds, classrooms, dormitories and canteens, they have not been to other places. Marineland is one of the few large islands in the world. He really wants to see and learn. DeLog suddenly said, I stayed at the Navy headquarters for a while. If you want to go out, I can take you around. Then what are you waiting for? Let's go. Porosalino was immediately overjoyed. After this period of getting along, the four of them got to know each other a lot. Porosalino and Sakaski also knew that Dorag was the son of Lieutenant General Garp. You go ahead, I'll go back and rest. After Sakaski finished speaking, he was about to go back to the dormitory, but Porosalino grabbed him and warned, Sakaski, this is a group activity. What you do is destroying collective behavior. Everyone, we are friends, you can't lose your friendship. DeLog also said, yes, Sakaski, just go out for a walk, no problem. Jon also said, we will stay here for a long time, and we have to go out sooner or later. We just have time today, so just go out and relax. Although Sakaski was serious, he was not unkind. He hesitated and finally agreed. A group of 4 people, wearing Navy training uniforms, walked out of the dormitory. Thanks to Dorag's leadership, they quickly walked out of the headquarters base. Although they were checked several times along the way, after their identities were confirmed, everything went smoothly. Marineford is indeed prosperous, much more prosperous than our place. Most of Marineford is a naval base, but in addition to the surrounding bases, there are towns in the center, and they are very prosperous. Most of the people coming and going are the families of the Navy and soldiers. The streets are bustling, but not chaotic. Jon, are we 2 friends? Porosalino suddenly asked Jon. Jon was instinctively startled and asked warily, what do you want to do? Porosalino smiled ingratiatingly, and his already wretched face became even more wretched, borrow some money. Borrow money? Jon shouted in disbelief. You don't have any money yourself. Porosalino looked embarrassed. If I had money, would I still need to borrow it from you? Come on, lend me some money and I'll buy something. Seeing the expectant look on Porosalino's face, Jon suddenly reacted. His impression of Porosalino was still as a naval admiral decades later, forgetting that Porosalino was just a new recruit who had just joined the Navy, and it seemed normal to have no money. Why did you ask me to borrow it? Why didn't you ask Sakaski and DeLog to borrow it? Porosalino immediately complained. Sakaski's pocket is cleaner than his face. How can he lend me money? Dorag is a stingy man. Let's not mention it. We have the best relationship, and you also have money. Of course I'll borrow it from you. How do you know I'm rich? Jon remained vigilant. Isn't your father the chief of the branch base? He must be rich, Porosalino said matter-of-factly. Jon said, how come these words come out of your mouth? It feels like my father is corrupt. You are thinking too much. Porosalino quickly waved his hand to deny. Jon asked, how much do you want to borrow? 1 million first. Roll. When he left Nane, although Jon brought some money, he couldn't bear to borrow it from Porosalino. In the end, the 2 bargained and loaned Porosalino 100,000. Don't look at the fact that 100,000 belly is much less than tens of millions, but it can still buy a lot of things. Besides, they are all at the naval base, and they don't need to buy anything at ordinary times. Porosalino is I bought some items that interested me. You fool, you didn't go to class, why did you run out? Just as Jon and the others were wandering around, Suddenly a loud shout full of anger rang out in their ears. Then before Jon and the others could realize what was going on, a white shadow appeared in front of them instantly and slapped them toward the log. Boom. Although Dorag tried his best to avoid it, he was still slapped on the head. He shouted angrily, "Old man, are you crazy? What a speed!" Jon was secretly shocked. When he heard the sound, he had already activated the hockey of seeing and hearing, but he still only caught a trace of the breath. When they reacted, the other party had already appeared in front of them. Jon had never encountered this situation before. When he was in the South China Sea, no one could escape his domineering perception. Even among the students of this class, including Porosalino and Sakaski, they can't escape his domineering perception. The only uncertainty is whether Porosalino, who uses his ability, can escape from his perception. But the tall and burly man standing in front of him now makes it difficult for him to capture the domineering force of his knowledge. If he attacks him, even if he has the foresight of the domineering power, he will never be able to avoid it. This is a middle-aged man wearing a navy justice coat and a white suit. Judging from his military rank, he is a vice admiral. He is tall, broad-chested, has a scar on his left eye, blue eyes, short black hair and beard, and wears a dog head hat. He is staring at Dorag fiercely. "You fool, I sent you to Zephyr to study. You're lucky enough to come out to play. Believe it or not, I'll beat you to death. Old man, don't go too far. We have a holiday today, why can't we come out?" Dorag was very unhappy. If it were anyone else, he would have turned against him long ago, but facing his own father, he couldn't express his pain. Porosalino and Sakaski, who were already tense and ready to take action at any time, immediately relaxed after hearing the conversation between Dorag and Garp. "Have a holiday." Garp looked confused, then he scanned the three Jon characters, and after getting the exact answer, he burst out laughing. "Wow, ha ha ha, it turns out it's a holiday, then it'll be fine, you didn't tell me earlier, asking for trouble." Snort. Dorag, who has been educated with sticks for many years, has long been familiar with his father's personality. He does not refute, but is full of disdain. His father is really unreliable. He does not give him any face. In public, he talks about smoking. Just smoke. Are they your classmates? Just in time, I'm treating you to a treat today. I'll treat you to a meal. Garp didn't care about his son's expression at all. Instead, he spoke enthusiastically to Jon and the three of them. After speaking, he took the lead and left regardless of whether Jon or the others agreed or not. Jon and the three of them all looked at Dorag. Dorag sighed helplessly. "Let's go, it's rare for the old man to be generous." Garp was obviously very familiar with this place, and he soon led Jon and the others to a restaurant, where he ordered a lot of food. "You three are all Dolig's classmates. I am Dolig's father. You can just call me Uncle Garp." Seeing Garp laughing, Jon was quite uncomfortable and took the lead in shouting, "Lieutenant General Garp." After hearing this, Garp's face straightened and he shouted, "What do you call Lieutenant General? There is no Lieutenant General here. Call me Uncle Garp." Jon had no choice but to shout, "Uncle Garp." Porosalino yelled out loud, but Sakaski hesitated and finally followed suit. "Wah ha ha ha." Garp laughed even more happily, leaving Jon quite speechless. Garp's point of laughter was a bit low. Looking at Dorag, he had already covered his forehead, looking like he couldn't bear to look at him. "You fool, you must study hard under Zephyr. Although that guy is serious and boring, his level is still good. In terms of physical skills, I am no worse than your father. If you don't learn well, I will beat you again." Garp warned Dolig with a serious look on his face. Dolig quickly changed the subject. "Dad, didn't you go to the New World? Why did you come back so soon?" Garp said, "I went to the New World and had a fight with the Golden Lion. This guy was so good at running away that I couldn't catch up with him, so I had to come back." Having said this, he was obviously very depressed. The Golden Lion was now the most powerful pirate in the New World. He went to the New World this time to stop the expansion of the Golden Lion, but who knew that the Golden Lion would not confront him head-on. After seeing him, he used his power to fly away as soon as he saw him. No matter how powerful Garp was, there is no way to catch up with the Golden Lion that can fly. I heard that the New World is very chaotic right now. Even the Warring States generals were sent there. Is it really that chaotic over there? Dorag is obviously also a person who pays close attention to current affairs. Although he doesn't know much about the New World, he is quite familiar with the Navy headquarters and knows that Sengoku is temporarily stationed in the New World. It's chaotic, of course it's chaotic. Garp's cynical face showed a little seriousness, and he said, "It's okay to talk to you little guys. By the way, I can also let you see it." Jon and others immediately pricked up their ears. Everyone wanted to do something in the future, so they naturally wanted to understand the situation. The second half of the Grand Line, which is what those pirates call the New World, is now the sea area with the largest concentration of pirates in the world, and among the thousands of pirates, there are a few that are particularly powerful. Pirates are difficult to destroy even with the Navy. Are the pirates so powerful already? Even the Navy can't destroy them. Sakazuki frowned and was very unhappy. He was an absolutely righteous man who hated pirates extremely. He joined the Navy just to eradicate pirates. He was very dissatisfied when he heard that pirates were powerful. Garp said, "That's not the case. It's difficult to exterminate. It doesn't mean it can't be exterminated. It just requires paying too much of a price. It's a bit outweighing the gains. No matter how powerful the pirate is, when facing our Navy, he can only flee." This is not because Garp promotes the Navy, but it is the fact that most pirates are not willing to face the Navy. Even the first-class Golden Lions are not willing to go to war with the Navy if it is not necessary. There are several powerful pirate groups in the New World now. The first one is the Golden Lions Flying Pirate Group. The Golden Lion is a user with the Piao Piao fruit ability. His pirate group can fly into the sky and is the most difficult to deal with. They are also the strongest pirate group in the New World now. Following them are the Roger Pirates, the Whitebeard Pirates, the Charlotte Family Pirates, etc. The captains of these pirate groups are monsters, and their bounties have reached more than 1 billion Baileys. The current bounty is not the bounty of a few decades from now. The number of pirates in the world with a bounty of more than 1 billion Belly can be counted on 2 hands. The Golden Lion is a character with great ambitions. Roger is not easy to deal with. His crew members are also monsters. As for Whitebeard, his abilities are terrifying. Charlotte Lingling is also a monster, and there are others. Pirates, the New World is in great chaos right now. If it weren't for our Navy's suppression, it would have been chaos long ago. Listening to Garp talking about familiar names one after another, Jon was very excited. These were all familiar big names in one piece. This was the first time he heard the names of these people mentioned by others. It can also be judged from Garp's description that these future great pirates have now begun to become famous in the sea. The Golden Lion is the most powerful, and Jon also knows that the Golden Lion is indeed another ocean overlord after Rocks. If he hadn't lost to Roger a few years later, Roger might not have had the chance to achieve the title of Pirate King. Many of the most famous pirates on the sea are former members of the Rocks Pirates. It can be imagined how powerful the Rocks Pirates were back then. If Rocks hadn't committed suicide, coupled with internal instability, this pirate group would have the potential to threaten the rule of the Navy and the world government. Next, several people listened to Garp constantly bragging about his power and talking about interesting things on the sea. Except for Dorag, Jon and the 3 of them listened with interest, and Garp became more and more enthusiastic. When the food was served, they discovered that Garp had actually ordered a table full of food, with more than 20 dishes, and they were all in large portions. Normally, this would be enough food to feed a dozen people, but after they started eating, all of them were devoured at an extremely fast speed. This also made Jon feel like a mess again. Dorag, boy Jon, boy Porosalino, boy Sakazuki, I'm going to go for a while first, and I'll tell you something more interesting when I come back later. After Garp left, he didn't come back for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and 20 minutes later. Dolig's face was already blue and purple, and he shouted angrily, "I knew he was unreliable a long time ago, but I didn't expect that he didn't even want to face him." The 3 of them, Jon, were also dumbfounded. Garp, who looked bold and generous just now, actually escaped from the bill. Sure enough, what kind of grandpa is the same kind of grandson? Garp can indeed do this kind of thing. Straw Hat Luffy was raised and educated by Garp. Since he has developed that kind of character, it means Garp is not much better. The first time I saw this legendary Vice Admiral, although I was not disappointed, I was really dumbfounded. Dorag looked ugly and took out all the money he had, but it was not even half. In the end, he had to borrow part of it from Jon to pay for the meal. Garp was shameless to eat the overlord meal, he still want face. Jon was also extremely depressed and stupid. I came from a small branch in the South China Sea and was actually the richest. I also became the creditor of the future naval admiral and the leader of the Revolutionary Army. It really felt like a sense of accomplishment. After being treated like this by Garp, Jon and the others were not very interested in continuing their shopping. After strolling around for a while, they returned to the dormitory. Starting today, I will teach you practical combat skills. It was another new morning. Zephyr stood on the podium and said what all the students had been waiting for. Jon was shocked. He had also been waiting for a long time. The previous courses were very important, including various theories, maritime combat tactics, etc. But after all, this world still pays more attention to personal combat effectiveness, so he naturally wants to learn practical combat skill. If there were still people who deserted during the theoretical class, then at this moment, everyone was staring at Zephyr expectantly. You are all outstanding soldiers selected by each branch and headquarters. I have observed you before. Your foundation is quite solid and you have met my minimum standards. Therefore, what I want to teach you next is the sixth form of the Navy. When I heard that it was the sixth form of the Navy, those who knew it were more serious, and the same was true for Jon. When I watched anime in the past, I always thought that the sixth form of the Navy was the most basic move of the Navy. But after coming to this world, he discovered that the sixth form of the Navy was not what he thought. The standard of the sixth form of the Navy is actually not low. Branch base officers like his father did not learn all the sixth form of the Navy. They only mastered the iron blocks and paper drawings, but did not master the other forms. Jon also learned 2 moves from his father. Now that he has the opportunity to learn all 6 moves, Jon is naturally looking forward to it. Compared to others, he knows better that although the sixth form of the Navy is the foundation, there are even stronger secrets of the sixth form on top of it. If one can master the secret of the sixth form, he can at least reach the level of a colonel at the Navy headquarters. I believe that many of you know what the sixth form of the Navy is, and even most of you have been exposed to it, but what I want to tell you is that regardless of whether you have learned it before, forget everything you have learned before. Remember the training methods I taught you. Zephyr knew that these students had been exposed to the 6 forms to some extent, but he could also be sure that the 6 forms that most of them had come into contact with were not the most orthodox ones, and if he wanted to teach, he had to teach the most correct method. He also has this confidence. Shaving, iron block, paper drawing, moon step, orashi kick, and finger spear, these 6 moves are collectively called the 6 styles. They are the most important physical skills in the Navy, and are physical skills that can allow people to surpass the limits of human physical ability. If you can master them all, you will be able to fight even those with devil fruit abilities. It is a physical technique that all generals and commanders in this department must master. First, let's start with shaving. In the blink of an eye, another month passed. During this month, Zephyr mainly explained the 6th form of the Navy, which was mainly based on actual drills at the training ground. After explaining the essentials, he asked Jon and the others to practice by themselves. He corrected him. Point gun, iron. Jon concentrated his power on his index finger and struck out like a lightning bolt, hitting Doberman who was sparring with him. Doberman responded with an iron block. After being hit, he unexpectedly not a step back. Lanjiao. Doberman quickly counterattacked and kicked out, while Jon instantly moved to the other side at a high speed and launched another attack, attacking continuously with his finger gun. The two of them attacked and defended each other with 6 postures, and they stopped after fighting for a long time. Continuously using the 6 moves, Jon's physique improved a lot, but he was still very tired. Doberman, who was fighting against him, was even worse than him, and he was panting from exhaustion. Jon, how on earth did you practice? You mastered the finger gun, shave, iron block and moon step so quickly. Until now, I can only practice the iron block and Lanji fairly well, and I haven't even started with the other items yet. Doberman was very depressed. Everyone entered school at the same time, and he was even older than Jon. Not only was his academic ability inferior to Jon, but now he could hardly beat Jon in physical skills. Jon said, I'm just getting started, and I'm far from truly mastering it. You see, Sakaski, Porosalino, and Dorag have all mastered the 6 postures, and we're still here. Getting started slowly. Doberman said. They are all monsters, incomparable. Their foundation is much better than ours. Naturally, they are familiar with the 6 styles faster than us. In my opinion, you are not worse than them. You are younger. As long as you are physically fit once you get up there, everything else won't be a problem. Doberman was later to become Vice Admiral of the Navy, and his future achievements would also be extraordinary. He was currently in the same class as Jon. To practice the 6th form of the Navy, it is not enough to just practice hard. Zephyr asked Jon to practice in pairs, so Jon and Doberman became partners. The 2 monsters Porosalino and Sakaski also became opponents, and Drago's opponent was a student from the same period who ate the animal devil fruit. In just over a month, Jon has mastered 4 moves, and the remaining 2 moves are still in the process of getting used to. It is estimated that he will be able to use them in a short time. Apart from the 2 monsters Porosalino and Sakaski, as well as the secretive Dorag, Jon's progress in understanding the 6th form of the Navy is considered to be among the best. After Zephyr's guidance, Jon's eyes were really opened. Although his training in the past 10 years was effective, there were also many problems. After Zephyr's guidance, although there was not much progress for a while, as time went by, it will definitely get twice the result with half the effort than before. Jon's life is very simple. He takes classes and trains during the day and exercises his fruit abilities at night. He only needs about 4 or 5 hours of deep sleep every day. Under this crazy hard training state, the progress is naturally very great, whether it is physical skills or fruit abilities. For now, Jon has not started to develop the fruit, but only uses the basic fruit ability. The plant he has created now is too weak. It is okay to attack ordinary people. If it attacks the strong, it is like scratching an itch. Now Jon has been able to control the growth of plants to more than 3 meters, and can produce many plants at the same time. In the process of using the ability, he also discovered a problem. Not only can he create plants himself, but he can also control the growth of other plants. Moreover, it is much easier to use the ability on existing plants than to create plants himself. If you use your own power to create seeds, you can make them grow to more than 3 meters at most, but if you use your power on other plants, you can grow them to about 5 meters, and the consumption is much less than making them out of thin air. It is no exaggeration to say that in a place with a large number of plants, Jon's devil fruit ability is more than doubled compared to a place without plants. But there is also a problem. After a lot of research and development, Jon discovered that not every plant can grow all the time. He found that some plants have a limit to their growth. Just like the most common grass, he tried his best to make the weeds grow to about 3 meters at most, but the saplings can easily grow to the limit of 4 or 5 meters. Different saplings and plants have different growth levels. Jon is not surprised that this situation occurs. Creating plants out of thin air is nothing, and developing plants from existing plants are 2 different concepts. They are fundamentally different, and it is natural that they will consume more. Time flies. Fingergun. A sharp air bullet was shot at Porosalino quickly. The air bullet hit Porosalino's body, and it seemed that Porosalino was not hurt. But the next moment, people were surprised. A scene happened. After the air bomb hit Porosalino, suddenly, a flash of green appeared and turned into a tree at an extremely fast speed. The vine-like saplings entangled Porosalino and quickly grew into a big tree. Porosalino's body was completely covered by the tree, leaving only his head outside. Tisk, Jon, you have a good imagination. You have developed the finger gun to this extent, and you also used the flying finger gun to shoot out the seeds, and then activated the ability to trap the opponent. It seems that you have developed the fruit very well. The big tree that trapped Porosalino was 6 to 7 meters high, and it was also very thick, almost covering Kizaru's body. Unfortunately, the activation speed of your move is still very slow. It takes a few seconds to grow from a sapling to a big tree. You must use the sapling to entangle the opponent in advance. However, with this degree of entanglement, it is easy for someone to break free. Quote. With a flash of yellow light, the big tree that trapped Porosalino was instantly shaken away by him and turned into a piece of debris. I've been practicing with you for so long, and you still want to take one of my tricks. Porosalino suddenly showed a sly smile, suddenly raised his hand and pointed it in Jon's direction, and a laser flashed. Mistweed, Porosalino, you idiot. Jon was startled, and quickly moved aside with all his strength, and then there was a bang where he was standing. Looking back at the deep crater on the ground, Jon's eyes twitched. Porosalino, do you want to kill me? Porosalino chuckled and said, I know you can definitely avoid it. It's really enviable, how domineering you are. He is no longer a recruit who just came out of Bay High. After arriving at the Navy headquarters, he already knows the existence of hockey and is polishing his body in order to cultivate hockey as soon as possible. Among their new students in this period, so far, only Sakaski and Porosalino are qualified to practice hockey, and the others are not yet qualified. For a person like Jon who was born with the power of knowledge and knowledge, Porosalino was really jealous. He and Sakaski had been training for a while, so they could only awaken the power of knowledge and knowledge, which was still the most basic level. At this stage, it is far behind Jon. Regarding Porosalino's shameless level, Jon had learned too much in the past 6 months and was too lazy to argue. You know what the hell, what if I don't react? You yellow monkey. I have been with Porosalino for a long time, and our relationship is very strong, and we can talk very casually. That's you. If it were anyone else, I would shoot him with a laser and blow him up. Porosalino pointed his finger at Jon. He obviously didn't like Jon calling him a yellow monkey, but he wasn't really angry either. For Porosalino, Jon was his best friend at the Navy headquarters. Although he had known Sakaski for a longer time, Sakaski was too serious and could not get along with his temperament. Jon was different. The two of them heard each other, joked, and were not angry at all. Even in terms of bickering, he was really no match for Jon. Over time, the relationship between the two was very strong. Jon actually had the same idea as Porosalino, although he and Dorag were roommates and spent the longest time together. But Dorag, how should I put it, is a bit fake. Although he can get along well with him, he is obviously not as open-minded as Porosalino. After coming to this world for more than 10 years, Jon rarely spends time with his peers. Porosalino is the one he gets along with the best. He doesn't have to worry so much when getting along with him, and he can also help him a lot in his cultivation. Porosalino, what did Teacher Zephyr ask you to do this morning? Jon asked. Porosalino curled his lips and said, what else can I do? It's just another scolding, saying that I don't train seriously, and asking me to use my devil fruit less. That's strange to me. The fruit's ability is my strength. If you don't focus on practicing fruit abilities, do you have to practice physical skills to the death? Isn't this choosing sesame and losing watermelon? That's right. When Jon heard this, he was immediately relieved. If Zephyr was most dissatisfied with who among their new recruits, it would definitely be Porosalino. Others feared and respected Zephyr, but Porosalino liked to stand up to him, so the relationship between the two was very bad. Zephyr publicly criticized Porosalino more than once. Likewise, Porosalino Nuo also contradicted Zephyr several times. Regarding this matter, Jon also tried to persuade Porosalino several times, but to no avail, so he stopped forcing it. I remember that in the One Piece anime, it was vaguely mentioned that the relationship between Porosalino and Zephyr was very bad. In the plot, Zephyr was defeated by Kizaru and met a miserable end. From a neutral perspective, Jon actually thinks that Zephyr is right about this. Zephyr's suggestion is absolutely correct. Even though the fruit ability is very strong, physical skills are also very important. Let Porosalino it is right to practice more physical skills. But Porosalino is definitely a problem student. If Zephyr talks to him properly, he will definitely listen. It's just that this is Zephyr's first time as an instructor. In addition, he was in a high position before and treated students very harshly. It is impossible for him to lower his status and persuade them step by step. He is directly demanding in the form of orders. As a result, the two people were at odds with each other, and the relationship was very tense. If it weren't for Porosalino's ability and the fact that he was a promising prospect of the Navy, he would have been kicked out by Zephyr long ago. Gone. Porosalino, I said you too, why do you have to argue with Teacher Zephyr? He is doing it for your own good. Whispering sound. Porosalino snorted disdainfully and said, I'm not wrong, why should I admit my mistake? This is between him and me, so don't ask so many questions. I didn't even bother to ask. Seeing that his good intentions were treated like a donkey, Jon didn't bother to persuade him anymore. With Pelusalino's temperament, any relationship with someone who is more serious and not very tolerant would definitely not work out well. Do you have any other good suggestions about my abilities? Pelusalino scratched his head and said, You still have to ask me. I think you have already developed your abilities very well. If it were me, I wouldn't have thought of those strange attack methods of yours, but your ability, the dependence on plants, is very strong, and there is a big gap in the strength between places with plants and places without plants. Compared to his own shiny fruit, Pelusalino felt that Jon's devil fruit was much more complicated. Forget it, I'll do my own research. Jon knew that his question was in vain. Today we will have neither theoretical classes nor training classes. Standing on the podium, Zephyr glanced around at the people below, and finally said with a serious face, You have also been studying with me for a few months, and the 1-year period is coming soon, although you all have a lot of experience. I have made great progress and learned a lot, but I'm afraid you don't even know whether you have applied what you have learned. Today, we have a practical class. You all know that the Navy's duty is to maintain the tranquility of the sea. The biggest factor affecting the tranquility of the sea is pirates. The content of the practical class is to let you apply what you have learned to deal with pirates. Many of you have fought against pirates. No, but what I want to tell you is that the pirates of the Grand Line are different from the pirates of the Four Seas. Dealing with pirates requires not only strength, but also command and judgment, because when fighting at sea, the sea, climate, wind direction, etc., can change at any time. At this time, you need to use the knowledge you have learned. Quote. After hearing Zephyr's words, everyone in the classroom looked at each other. No one thought that this was what Zephyr was going to say. After our instructor's research, we will let you go out to sea and deal with pirates alone. The 40 people will be divided into 2 groups, one group of 20. We will give you a month and we will assess you. Whichever group wins the final victory will have extra points for your final assessment results. Some people may think that this extra point is not important, but you are totally wrong. Since you became my students, I have been recording assessments for you. Each one will have his or her own individual score sheet, which will eventually be compiled together. The final score will affect your distribution after graduation. If you pass the assessment well, you will stay at the Navy headquarters and hold some important positions. If you pass the assessment poorly, you may be assigned to other branches. So how you will officially join the Navy in the future depends on your final assessment results for this year. When they heard that the final assessment scores would affect their distribution after graduation, the expressions of most people changed. Why are you all working so hard to enter this elite class? Isn't it just to become a student of Zephyr, have a good future, obtain more resources, and achieve a higher military rank in the future? Now that there is an assessment that can affect their future, it is difficult not to pay attention to it. Remember, you are fighting as a team. On the winning side, everyone will get the same bonus points. There is no distinction between high and low. This assessment is mainly for your team, not for individuals' strength. A group of warships will not equip you with other personnel except for your 20 people each, so the only one you can rely on is yourself. After quickly explaining the method and content of this assessment, Zephyr gave the final order. Now, everyone stand up and follow the instructor to the port. All military supplies are prepared for you and are on the warship. You only need to wait until you get on the warship and then you can directly drive the warship away. Zephyr was indeed a man of action. He started taking action after giving the order, without even giving Jon and the others a chance to think. The rest of the class could only follow up quickly. What's going on? This old guy is actually doing this, and now he wants us to go to sea to fight pirates. Pelusalino said to Jon in a low voice, I heard that ordinary recruits will never have the opportunity to lead an independent army in combat. We haven't graduated yet, but we are going to fight against pirates. Aren't we afraid of us? Suffered a loss. Jon said, there should be someone following us. If we really encounter pirates that we can't deal with, they will definitely take action. He remembered that when Zephyr was an instructor, he often led his students to fight at sea. Later, when Zephyr had his arm cut off by Whitebeard too, he led his students to fight at sea. Therefore, Jon was not too surprised by Zephyr's sudden decision. The group of people arrived at the port soon. At this time, a large number of naval soldiers had gathered around the port. 2 warships were docked at sea. They should be the warships used for the assessment. Zephyr asked all the students to stand, and then said, "Next, I will divide them into groups. Those whose names are called by me will stand on the left side. Sakaski, waiters, Doberman, Pullman, Jon." There were 20 people in total, and they soon stood on the left side. 20 of you are in one group, and the other 20 are in one group. Remember, you are operating in a team. If there are casualties in any group, the score will be affected. Now, get on the boat immediately. Sakaski took the lead, and members of Jon's group all boarded the warship on the left, while the other group boarded the warship on the right. It's a pity that if I'm not with Jon, I'll definitely lose a lot of fun in the next month. Porosalino's face was full of disappointment. He had the best relationship with Jon. He originally wanted to be a group with Jon, but now he didn't get it. After Jon and his group boarded the warship, they saw another person standing on the warship, who turned out to be a commodore. "You don't have to worry about me. I'm just responsible for recording and it won't affect you." Everyone looked at each other, but considering that this was an assessment, it would be normal if someone monitored and recorded it. After Jon and others were surprised, they all gathered on the deck and began to discuss. Who among us is responsible for commanding, who is responsible for driving the ship, who is the navigator, and who is responsible for cooking? The temporary group formed, even if they have been classmates for more than half a year, have a good relationship with each other, but this is a very important assessment, and everyone attaches great importance to it. Although the bonus points after winning are the same, if you perform well in the process, it will undoubtedly be more glorious. But if you want to win, you cannot act recklessly. You must have a clear division of labor and be organized. Otherwise, it is impossible to win another group if you are in a mess. There was silence for a long time, with no one speaking, until someone broke the silence. "I will be responsible for driving the ship. I grew up on a warship. I am quite experienced in this area. I have also listened to Teacher Zephyr's teachings. I should be able to control this warship, but I still need someone to assist me." Quote. Jon looked over and saw that the person speaking was Terry Caffrey, a man with a low presence in the class. His strength was not outstanding among the class, but he had good theoretical knowledge and had been praised by Zephyr several times. Everyone was relieved when the first person spoke. Responsible for driving a warship is definitely a hard job. Many people are not willing to take it. Now that someone takes it, it is a good thing for them. "I'll go with Caffrey, we're familiar with each other," a slightly short man said. "Then I'll be a chef. I was a chef before I joined the Navy. I promise I won't let you down," a slightly fat, round-faced man said with a smile. His name was Pemberton. He was the oldest of their recruits in this batch. Because he was older and knew how to deal with people, he was also the most popular in this batch. "I'm good at observing climate, but the climate in the sea is changeable, so I can only do my best." Another thin man with a fair complexion and a height of more than 2 meters spoke. His name was Mills. He was an absolute top student. Among the recruits in this period, his theoretical knowledge ranked first. In this way, the navigator, chef, and driver have all been established, but no one has ever spoken about the command first. Obviously, they have some scruples. Not everyone can be the commander-in-chief of 20 people. This status is very special and completely different from the previous ones. Everyone is a proud and arrogant person, and it is not easy to obey the students of the same period. But similarly, there are many people who want to sit in this position. After all, this is the position where they can excel the most, but it is also the most likely to make mistakes. Even those who are strong and confident are still hesitant. Since everyone can't decide, let's vote. This is not an easy job. It requires responsible and capable people. Anyway, everyone knows each other and is familiar with it, so just vote. Just when the rest of the people were hesitant, Big Brother's Pemberton spoke up and immediately turned his attention to Jon. "I'll vote first. I choose Jon. The reason is that it's Joe. N has calm analytical skills and a strong sense of knowledge and domineering. At critical moments, he can definitely make the most correct judgment." Jon was immediately confused. He really didn't want to stand out, and he didn't think it would fall on him. He adhered to his previous ideas and was content with what he could. Anyway, His purpose of coming to the Navy headquarters had been achieved. No matter what, it needs to be too noticeable. But he never thought that if he didn't fight, someone would help him fight, and it was the oldest Pemberton. Is there anything fishy about the oldest recommending the youngest? He couldn't remember when he had attracted Pemberton's attention, and the two of them didn't even have much communication. How did this person know his characteristics? Jon himself was stunned, not to mention the others. They all looked at Pemberton with incredible eyes, as if to say, "Are you kidding?" Although no one pays much attention to age, it is obvious that Jon's age makes them unable to trust him. Why should a boy who is less than 18 years old give command to him? This is what most people think. Pemberton twisted his fat body and spread his hands. It's a vote anyway. Naturally, you vote for the person you trust. I chose Jon. As for who you vote for, it has nothing to do with me. I vote for Jon too. Suddenly, another person spoke up and voted for Jon. Jon's face suddenly became depressed. Doberman, what are you doing? Although we have a partnership, you still have to understand the situation. Didn't you see the expressions of these people? There were 20 people, and Jon got 2 votes immediately, which made everyone else look at each other. I choose Sakaski. Sakaski is the strongest and has excellent leadership skills. I am not convinced by anyone else and only want to believe in Sakaski. Someone finally voted for another person, and the person chosen was surprisingly Sakaski, who has always been the best in this period. I vote for waiters. I also choose Sakaski. Only the strongest can become a leader. Sakaski, I'll vote for him too. Vitus is also very strong and has been a soldier for 7 years. He is most familiar with fighting pirates. Vitus, Sakaski, Sakaski, Vitus. I vote for Jon. Me too. Quote, quote. In the blink of an eye, 17 people voted, and only 3 names appeared: Sakaski, Waiters and Jon. Needless to say, Sakaski and Jon, Waiters has joined the Navy for many years and has been serving in the West Sea before. He is also a devil fruit user. He is powerful and experienced, so many people choose him. What made Jon's scalp numb was that he actually received 4 votes. In addition to Pemberton and Doberman, the 2 people responsible for driving the warship also chose him, which made him very surprised. But precisely because there were only 4 votes, he was relieved. Of the 17 votes that had been cast, Jon received 4 votes, Waiters received 6 votes, and Sakaski received 7 votes. In the end, only 3 of them were left without voting. Even if a miracle occurs, Sakaski and Waiters are crazy and vote for him, otherwise he is the most unlikely person. I abstain. Jon immediately raised his hand to indicate that he was abstaining. Sakaski was very straightforward and cast his vote without hesitation. As a result, the result came out. Waiters lost to Sakaski by 1 vote. Now that the results have been obtained, Sakaski will be the commander of our team. Pemberton was the first to propose a vote, so he was about to make a summary when he was suddenly interrupted. Stop talking nonsense, that group has already set off, we can't be slower than them. It was Waiters who interrupted Pemberton. His face was filled with impatience and dissatisfaction. Waiters was so rude, but Pemberton didn't get angry. He still smiled as if he didn't care. Sakaski said in a deep voice, "Let's go." Everyone quickly got into position, those who sailed the boat, those who observed, and those who were looking for rooms. Sakaski stood at the bow of the ship, his face as cold as ever, and he didn't know what he was thinking. This group is quite interesting. I don't know how they will develop next. Commodore Brooke, who was responsible for monitoring the records, watched the development of the situation with interest. This time he had a heavy responsibility. Not only did he have to record, but he also had to observe the character and behavior of this group of people. He had to submit a summary afterwards, so naturally he didn't dare to be careless. Jon followed Pemberton into the kitchen and watched Pemberton busy in an orderly manner. "You came with me, don't you just want to see how I cook?" Pemberton asked Jon. Jon shrugged and said, "I'm just curious, why did you vote for me just now? We don't seem to be that familiar, right?" Pemberton's hand movements did not stop. "As I just said, I think you are the most suitable, so of course I will vote for you." "Why? Sakaski is the strongest among us, and Vitus is also stronger than me. There are only 20 of us in total. It would be more appropriate for a strong person to lead us," Jon said. Pemberton said. If we just want to simply wipe out pirates, it is indeed best to be led by a strong person. But don't forget, our opponents this time are not just pirates, but also another group of opponents. From Teacher Zephyr's it can be seen from the distribution that the combat power of both sides is almost equal. At this time, an excellent command is particularly important, even. Even what? Jon asked after Pemberton hesitated to speak. Nothing. Pemberton thought about it for a while, but still didn't say anything, which made Jon feel very uncomfortable. He hated it when people spoke half-talk. The reason I voted for you is because you are indeed the most suitable. It's just that other people want to express themselves, which I can't see clearly. Take Sakaski and Waiters as examples. Sakaski is indeed the strongest, and in our current period, only Porisalino can compare with him. But Sakaski is too ruthless, impulsive, and easily swayed by emotions. Maybe this is related to his experience, but judging from his current performance, I don't think he is a qualified commander for the time being. Quote, as for Vitus, I come from the same sea area as him, and I have heard some things about him. This man is very strong, but jealous, and he will use any means to achieve his goals. Sometimes, in order to complete the task, he will even risk the lives of his companions. Abandon, do you think this kind of person is suitable to be our leader? As for you, you are very young and don't have as much experience as others. You may not have even participated in maritime combat, but this is not a shortcoming. Because you have not experienced it, you can look at it from an objective perspective. We are not lacking a person with rich experience, plus you are very calm, at least among us, you are the calmest, which is very helpful for you to control the overall situation. Am I as good as you say? Pemberton's analysis surprised Jon. No. When Jon's expression changed, Pemberton suddenly smiled and said, don't be angry. After what happened just now, I found that there are also shortcomings. What about? Jon asked. You are too low-key, or you don't want to show yourself, and always want to hide yourself behind. This is both a good thing and a bad thing. Maybe it is safer this way, but this is not in line with the normal reaction of your age, so I am very confused. How can you have such a mentality? Logically speaking, shouldn't this be my strategy? Pemberton smiled mockingly to himself. He had found Jon to be a bit low-key before, but he didn't expect that he could still resist this kind of temptation. Jon shrugged and said, I have to keep a low profile. If I had the strength of Sakaski, I wouldn't be so low-key. Being low-key is based on a lack of strength. That makes sense, so you and I really get along. Pemberton was very happy. He was busy quickly and then brought a plate of fruit to Jon. There are so many ingredients here. It's not time to eat yet. I'll get you some fruit first. Next, Jon didn't go anywhere else and stayed in the kitchen to help. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.